Chapter 641. Chu Tian led Yingying around the miracle sacred city a few times, feeling the charm of the miracle sacred city. Almost every district had several large commercial streets, and there was a giant commercial city in the main district. It could compare to a normal city in the real world. What kind of concept was this? This was the same as a city filled with large shops. There were no houses, no afterimages, and no other facilities. There were only tens of thousands of shops. If a normal person wanted to go shop by shop, stopping at each shop for an hour, not resting for 24 hours a day, they would need several years to go one round. But in the sacred city's large commercial district, there were various free transport points, which was very convenient. As long as one had a map of the shops, they could go to the area they wanted to go shopping or go to the shops they wanted to go to. The sacred city's commercial streets sold real-world resources. Therefore, it was enough to satisfy anyone's shopping addiction. Miracle Commerce had a large platform like the Miracle Shopping Center, so why did they need to create a large virtual shopping area? Actually, there was no conflict between the two. The Miracle Shopping Center was only a virtual platform after all. In the future, there would be tens of millions of products, and it would be hard for people to find treasures in the vast amount of data. They would have to search for them and search for them. The value of the Miracle Sacred City's commercial district was very high. First, the Miracle Sacred City was the center of the Miracle Continent. With more people using the Miracle Helmet, the Miracle Sacred City would be the only official main city, so it would never be taken over. It would always be the birthplace of people on the Miracle Continent, and it was also very convenient to transport. It wouldn't be strange for there to be several billion people coming every day. This kind of large flow was enough to turn the commercial district into a shopping paradise. The Miracle Sacred City was divided into the Elven District, the Giant District, the Dwarf District, the Undead District, and other different districts. The commercial district of these districts would be made into the special products of the corresponding races. The commercial district in the center of the sacred city would become the largest shopping area in the virtual world. This place would become a place of celebration for everyone. The Miracle Sacred City had large amounts of restaurants, entertainment, and adventuring services. These kinds of services didn't affect the balance, so of course they all had source stones to use. Other than that, the Miracle Sacred City was filled with large amounts of virtual properties. There were luxurious royal palaces that could hold tens of thousands of people, and there were exquisite tree houses and underground dwellings. It could satisfy the needs of emperors, kings, and lords, and it could provide a good virtual life for the middle and lower class people. There would be more and more people on the Miracle Continent in the future. Could it be that he was afraid of not being able to earn primeval stones? The Miracle Continent's ambition was not only to create a free, fair, and interesting spiritual world, they also wanted to use this product to topple all the industries in the real world. From that, business, life, research, and even politics would all be moved into this spiritual world. This was because the flow of time on the Miracle Continent was 4 to 5 times slower than the real world, and there were some special trial towers and special areas that could even slow it down by several dozen times. This meant that people's lifespans could be greatly extended, and they wouldn't die, grow old, or get sick here. This was a huge advantage that was hard to achieve in the real world. The Miracle Continent had enough space, cities, and land. As long as there was popularity, there would be benefits, and as long as there were benefits, there would be people chasing after them. The excess conflicts, energy, and wealth of the real world could be digested on the Miracle Continent. Laboratories were set up in the Holy City, highly imitating the real world, allowing scholars to conduct various simulated experiments and tests in the spiritual world. Not only could they reduce consumption, but they could also ensure safety and efficiency. In the Sacred City, one could directly enter the spiritual library and Miracle Academy to study, allowing people to easily read secret books collected from all over the world. They could also enjoy the lectures of outstanding scholars. No matter how poor the continent was, they would have the best educational resources. There were too many things like this, it couldn't be mentioned one by one. This was the charm of the Miracle Continent. Therefore, the Miracle Continent had endless possibilities and would have endless influence, only there was no way to predict it right now. The miracle continent itself was not unchanging. Miracle commerce had absorbed many talents, including many sages from all over the continent. This kind of team that grew stronger day by day would constantly research and update the miracle continent, making it more and more perfect. In the eyes of people like Ying, the miracle sacred city was simply a giant amusement park. There was food, drink, play, shopping, martial arts competitions, trials, and all kinds of interesting things, making her very satisfied with this. The two of them played in the sacred city for a while. They had already spent most of the day here. There were more and more people appearing in the main city area, and the two of them had walked enough, so they took off their helmets and returned to the real world. When the two of them took off their helmets, the others were still wearing their helmets indoors. They were probably fighting in the trial tower. Chu Tian brought Ying back to Miracle City. Miracle City was not as noisy as West Sea City or as lively as the Miracle Royal Palace, but the entire city was filled with a festive atmosphere. The elves presented their artworks for the city lord's wedding, the dwarves were carving statues for the city lord's wife, and even the ogres had decided to set this day as an ogre festival. Miracle City had already become a pearl of the forest of chaos. It had already become an existence that could control the continent. The Miracle City citizens' confidence and sense of honor was naturally strong. The city lord's wedding in West Sea City was very awe-inspiring, so this day had already become Miracle City's most important day. Greetings to the city lord's wife. Greetings to the city lord's wife. When Chu Tian brought Ying back, all the guards and citizens that saw the two of them all bowed down to them. Meng Ying was a bit embarrassed about being called the city lord's wife. After all, she wasn't used to it at first, but she was still very satisfied in her heart. When she returned to her room, she slowly took off the expensive and luxurious robe she was wearing. Her beautiful cheeks were slightly red, her slender and straight thighs were perfect, and her entire body was sparkling like jade, without the slightest flaw. Chu Tian looked at Meng Ying's slightly shy appearance and said, "You really are beautiful today. You really don't know how to speak." Meng Ying gave a snort. She pretended to be angry to hide her nervousness. "Am I not beautiful yesterday? Am I not beautiful tomorrow? Am I only beautiful today?" Chu Tian laughed and said, "Both beautiful, both beautiful." Who would have thought that Ying would turn her head? "Then why did you wait until now to marry me?" How could Chu Tian not know what Ying was thinking? He took the initiative to walk over and gently held her in his embrace, gently saying, "That is because we can live for a long, long time and we will be together for a long time in the future. We will never be separated again, starting from today and starting from tonight. Are you satisfied with this? My city lord's wife." Meng Ying reluctantly nodded. "I'll believe you this once." After she said this, she suddenly stood up and kissed Chu Tian on the cheek. Chu Tian hugged Ying's soft body and the two of them kissed each other. Finally they fell onto the bed in the candlelight and the two young figures intertwined together. From this moment on, whether it was their bodies or souls, the two of them had already established an inseparable connection. From this moment on, Meng Ying had officially become Chu Tian's woman and she had become the city lord's wife. All of this happened naturally, whether it was Chu Tian or Ying, there was nothing unexpected at all. The next day, Meng Ying woke up in a daze. Meng Ying's quiet and beautiful cheeks had a slight blush on them. Her inexperience gave her a charming feeling. Last night, she had completely transformed from a girl to a woman. At this time, her body was only covered with a thin blanket. A pair of long and slender legs were stretched out and a full chest was also faintly discernible under the blanket. Meng Ying felt like she was in a warm embrace. When she turned around, she saw Chu Tian's handsome and delicate face in front of her. His eyes were still closed. She didn't know if he was asleep or pretending to be asleep. Ying looked at his face and her heart was filled with joy and sweetness. She couldn't help going over and pecking his face like a chicken pecking rice. At this time, she felt some movement beside her. When she turned to look, her face immediately became very embarrassed. This was because there was a little snow-white fox sitting on the bed. Its two shifty eyes were curiously looking at the woman lying in its master's embrace. "When did a fox like you come in?" Meng Yingying suddenly sat up and saw the thin blanket fall off her body. In an instant, the spring scenery was revealed. It was as beautiful as a painting. Meng Yingying quickly grabbed the thin blanket to cover her body while her other hand desperately shook Chu Tian. "Hey, quickly wake up." Chu Tian opened his eyes to look at her and then closed them again. "What are you afraid of? It's a female fox." Meng Yingying said in an embarrassed voice. "That's not it. It's not early anymore." "So what? Even if we sleep until tomorrow morning, no one will dare care about me. Who told me to be the boss?" Meng Yingying anxiously pulled him up. "Big sister, Nangong Vivian, they will definitely laugh at me. This is too embarrassing. Get up, quickly get up." This girl's face was too thin. Now that they were officially husband and wife, could it be that she was still afraid of others gossiping about them? However, Chu Tian really did have a lot of things to take care of. He could only put on his clothes and walk into the city lord's hall with Meng Yingying. Chu Tian looked at the empty conference hall in a daze. There was only a mature and beautiful white-clothed woman sitting in the entire conference hall. The other seats were all empty. He asked in a puzzled voice, "Young miss, where are the others?" Meng Qingwu didn't look any different than usual. She was organizing the data sent by SmartBrain while saying with a tired yawn, "They are still playing on the Miracle Continent. Including the emperors, even the Dragon Elder and the Nether King are very fond of the Miracle Continent. They are all immersed in it and can't pull themselves out. Their group is currently challenging the Trial Tower. I think they won't be in the mood to come back to work for now." "Is that so?" Meng Yingying's heart itched hearing this. How can they be absent from work for no reason? I'll go find them and properly teach them a lesson. "Aya, after a night of Yingying, you really do look like the city lord's wife." Meng Qingwu revealed a smile as she blinked her eyes. "How was your night last night?" "Big sister, you're also joking with me." Meng Yingying's face instantly turned red as she quickly ran for her life. "I'll go find Nangong and the others." Meng Qingwu could only say, "Don't play for too long." A day in the real world was 4-5 days on the Miracle Continent. These fellows didn't come out for this long. It seemed like they really liked the Miracle Continent. It could be seen from this point that the Miracle Commerce product was an unprecedented success. Chapter 642. Chu Tian sat down next to Meng Qingwu. "How was our harvest this time?" "Very successful." Meng Qingwu gave a simple evaluation. "Our direct income reached several billion source stones. We also dealt a heavy blow to the Big Dry Empire, capturing the Big Dry Emperor and the opening of the Miracle Continent. After this matter is over, Miracle Commerce will be able to establish its position on the continent." Although Chu Tian had guessed that this wedding would bring quite a bit to the company, he never thought it would be this shocking. Other than the direct influence and benefits, this wedding was the cornerstone of Miracle Commerce's strategy on the continent. This was because there were several hundred representatives of powers that didn't have any contact with Miracle Commerce, but they all had direct contact with Miracle Commerce during the wedding. Most of them had already made plans to cooperate with Miracle Commerce. Miracle Commerce's transport towers, shopping centers, and communication systems would soon be built in different regions and countries of the continent. After this wedding, Miracle Commerce would officially jump out of the Western continent and their influence and products would spread across the continent for the first time. Although in terms of strength and army, Miracle Commerce was still lacking compared to the empires, Miracle Commerce had already created the first super business empire that spanned the continent. This was an achievement that no country or power on the continent could imagine. Chu Tian asked, "What are our next steps?" "Miracle Commerce has already reached the peak of the continent in terms of business. There isn't another company that can compete with us. What we need to do now is strike while the iron is hot." Meng Qingwu was not satisfied with the large harvest they had obtained because her duty was to seize every opportunity to obtain more. "Right now we are in a honeymoon period with the empire-level powers of the continent. Not to mention that the opening of the Miracle Continent will attract everyone's attention for a long time. We can use this chance to form a federation." Meng Qingwu's federation plan had been prepared for a long time. Miracle City's influence on the continent was not inferior to any power, even surpassing many empire-level powers. Miracle City had the name of a superpower, but they lacked the strength of a superpower. Miracle City was just a city in the end. In this world where only the strong were respected, if one didn't have enough strength, they wouldn't be able to maintain peace just by relying on alliances. Therefore, if Miracle City wanted to solidify itself, they could only go one step further and establish a true empire-level superpower. Chu Tian felt that it was about time. West Sea City's wedding was in the limelight. If Meng Qingwu were to make such a request to the Elven King and the Dragon Lord, it would be hard for them to refuse. After all, Miracle Commerce's grand plans had just begun. If they cooperated with Miracle City, they would obtain even more resources and benefits in the end. No one would refuse benefits, even the elves were the same. With Miracle City as the leader, other than the Forest Alliance and the Kingdom Alliance, there was also the Sea Race Alliance and the Underground Alliance. These powers weren't strong on the continent and they were in a loose state. If they could all unite and obey the leadership of the highest voice, a new empire-level force would be born. Meng Qingwu shook her head and said, "If that's all, I'm not satisfied." Chu Tian looked at her in shock. Could it be the young miss once more? Other than the headquarters in the Forest of Chaos, the several kingdoms in the north, the entire Western Sea, and the Purgatory subterranean world, I'm very interested in an even more important area. Meng Qingwu gently flicked her finger and a map of the continent appeared in front of them. Miracle City's current power only occupied a small part of the western side of the continent. Meng Qingwu gently pointed at an area. "I want to merge the Big Dry Empire into our territory." Chu Tian instantly sucked in a cold breath. Meng Qingwu had always been an ambitious leader, but Chu Tian had underestimated her. The Big Dry Empire was a superpower with close to 10,000 years of history. Although they had been miserably taken care of by Miracle City, the Big Dry Empire still had a foundation. If they really fought to the death with Miracle City, it was unknown who would win. Several 100,000 Big Dry Empire soldiers had died under Miracle City's hands. This blood feud could be said to be a conflict that couldn't be resolved. How could Miracle City turn their greatest enemy into an ally in the blink of an eye, and it was as a subordinate? There had never been an empire-level power on the continent that became a subordinate of another power. Meng Qingwu really dared to say this. But then again, if the Big Dry Empire could really be subdued by Miracle City, the effects would be unimaginable. This was because Miracle City's current conditions were enough to form an empire power. Before the Big Dry Empire had a conflict with Miracle City, they were one of the top 3 powers on the western continent. Not only did the Great Qian Empire control dozens of vassal countries in the western continent, but they had also extended their hands to the Western Sea a long time ago. The destruction of the powerful Sea Race Empire, Deep Blue, was very likely a result of the Great Qian Empire's covert actions. Now, the Great Qian Empire controlled about a quarter of the Western Sea, and the benefits were hard to resist. If Meng Qingwu's wish came true and the Big Dry Empire was subdued by Miracle City, the result would not be as simple as 2 empire-level powers merging together. The Forest of Chaos and the Big Dry Empire were very close in terms of geography. There were countless small powers between the 2 powers, with no lack of neutral and opportunistic powers. Now that these 2 superpowers merged together, the final result would be that the entire region would be connected. All the neutral and opportunistic powers would have no choice but to side with this new giant. Other than that, the entire Western Sea would merge with this new power. The Big Dry Empire, the Forest of Chaos, and the Western Sea, any one of these 3 places had the potential to become an empire-level power. This way, a giant would be born in the Western continent, finally spreading to the entire Western continent and dominating it. There had never been a power that could dominate an area like this. Miracle City would become the true overlord of the continent. Chu Tian of course knew the benefits of doing this, but he still knit his brows and said, "How confident are you?" Meng Qingwu countered with a question, "Whether it is using hard or soft methods, how confident are you in taking care of the Big Dry Emperor?" Chu Tian thought about it. Although the Big Dry Emperor hates me to the bone, he is still a person. If I use unscrupulous methods, it isn't hard for me to change a person's opinion of me. The main problem right now is not the Big Dry Emperor, rather it is the entire Big Dry Empire. If Chu Tian only used methods to deal with a single person, although it would be hard for someone on the level of the Big Dry Emperor, he could still do it. But the problem now was that the Big Dry Emperor was the Big Dry Empire's emperor, but the Big Dry Empire had several billion citizens. These people had lived in the Big Dry Empire for generations, so they already had the pride and dignity of an empire citizen. Was it easy to make them submit to Miracle City? The hardest to deal with was the nobles. This was because with a large reform, no matter how thorough it would harm the interests of large amounts of nobles, so it would be hard to avoid resistance in the end. The Big Dry Empire was an old power and the nobles were deeply rooted. How could it be easy to deal with them? Meng Qingwu confidently said, "Let's divide the work. You'll be in charge of the Big Dry Emperor and I'll be in charge of the Big Dry Empire. We'll use 2 months as the deadline. Whether we can succeed or not will depend on this time." Miracle commerce was very efficient, otherwise it wouldn't have been able to develop to its current scale in less than 4 years. However, Meng Qingwu wanted to move an empire that had been around for 10,000 years in just 2 months. This kind of task was not a normal kind of difficult. On the contrary, it was Chu Tian who felt it was easy to deal with the Big Dry Emperor alone. The young miss is filled with confidence. How could I not support her? The matter of Chu Tian and Meng Yingying's marriage was already known to the entire world and the Miracle Continent was spread to every corner of the continent. Because of the limited number of miracle helmets, there weren't many people that could enter the Miracle Continent. Therefore, the most important thing was to make more helmets as soon as possible. The 6 powers that were authorized to make helmets had already made the production of helmets the most important strategic goal of their countries. They all invested more resources, increasing the production of helmets by 10 times. The nobles of the various countries, including these emperors. He spent most of his time in the miracle world every day, busy expanding his territory and exploring training strategies. Thus, he was completely unaware of certain things happening in the continent. He had even neglected the important news of Meng Qingwu bringing a large group of people to the Deqian Empire. This was something that couldn't be helped. Who told the Miracle Continent to be too charming and challenging? Every person that had experienced it couldn't stop it all. The Miracle Continent did not just have strength for the emperors and nobles, it also had a large attraction for the lower-class families. This was because everyone's starting point was fair. Normal people could go through adventures and fortuitous encounters on the continent and surpass the famous emperors of the continent. Not only would they obtain a large sense of accomplishment, they could also obtain rich benefits from it. Chapter 643. The Big Dry Emperor was locked in the dungeon specially made for him by Miracle City. The 6 emperors had captured him alive with the help of the elven King Lancelot. But after the Big Dry Emperor was locked up in Miracle City, not to mention Chu Tian, not a single high-level member of Miracle Commerce or Miracle City appeared. They just left him hanging in the dungeon, like he wasn't an emperor of a generation, but rather a small character. The Big Dry Emperor's cultivation was suppressed by a large array. His hands, legs, waist, and neck were all shackled with runes. 2 barbs were pierced through his shoulders, completely sealing his spirit energy meridians. 7-8 Heaven Domain experts didn't move an inch, sitting in front of the dungeon without blinking. They guarded him 24 hours a day, so he had no hope of escaping at all. The Big Dry Emperor's current appearance was in a very sorry state. His long hair was scattered across his body and he was only wearing a thin set of clothes. His body was covered in blood and he was heavily injured. Although he had a heaven-shaking cultivation, he couldn't use it at all. Even standing up was an extravagant hope. What kind of great shame was this to an emperor? On this day, Chu Tian finally remembered the emperor that was locked up, therefore he decided to go to the dungeon to see him. After passing through the heavy guards of the dungeon, Chu Tian finally saw the imprisoned Big Dry Emperor. He saw that the Big Dry Emperor couldn't move at all, he was firmly suppressed by a large source energy array. Not to mention the Big Dry Emperor releasing his earth-shattering emperor might, perhaps he didn't even have the strength to walk. The Big Dry Emperor also felt a figure walk in and he looked up at the youth in front of him. He saw that the other side was very young, wearing a simple robe, with a helmet in his left hand and a fox on his right shoulder. Although he had never seen the other side before, The big dry emperor could recognize who it was with a single glance. Flux could kill. It was unknown how many times Chu Tian had died. Chu Tian said with a shrug, "Your Majesty, please don't look at me with this kind of gaze. Actually, no one wanted things to develop to this point. Have you never reflected on yourself? You have to know that from start to finish, Miracle City has never taken the initiative to invade a single inch of the Big Dry Empire's territory. It was the Big Dry Empire that kept provoking us. So strictly speaking, for things to develop to this point, it is your Majesty's own fault." This was indeed correct. But to the Big Dry Emperor, how could he admit his mistakes? The Heaven Emperor laughed coldly, the chains around him trembling a few times. It was a pity that he no longer had the strength to struggle, only able to let out a low and hoarse voice like that of an owl. "Have you specially come to humiliate me?" Chu Tian revealed a faint smile. "No, no, no, I specially made something for Sir Big Dry Emperor to calm down." The Dry Emperor tightly clenched his fists. "Big Dry Emperor, what do you do?" "Big Emperor's Dry Emperor." Chu Tian gave the helmet in his hand to the person beside him. "This is the spiritual helmet I specially made for Sir Big Dry Emperor." Emperor put Big Emperor to put, Chin Moon Emperor, Chin Dry Emperor, Sun Chin is, and had Emperor, Chin, son of. The prison guards were a few sages of death. These undead sages were sent by the Nether King from the Netherworld Sea to help Chu Tian. Not only were the undead sages knowledgeable, they were all in the Heaven Domain realm. Therefore, while they increased Miracle City's scholar strength, they also increased Miracle City's overall strength. A spectral wise one brought the helmet over with invisible energy, slowly sending it into the prison before slowly placing it on the Big Dry Emperor's head. The Big Dry Emperor didn't know what Chu Tian was up to, but even a fool would know that Chu Tian definitely wouldn't give her anything good to eat. The Big Dry Emperor is an emperor in the end. If you are humiliated too much, outsiders will think that Miracle City doesn't know how to treat guests. Chu Tian said with a smile, "The Big Dry Emperor is too excited, so he needs a quiet place to calm down. This spiritual helmet is specially made for the Big Dry Emperor. It can send the Big Dry Emperor into a spiritual world. This spiritual world's time flow is 300 times that of the real world, which means that one day in the real world is 300 days in the spiritual world. A normal person's mind can't withstand such a large difference in time, but the Big Dry Emperor's mind can properly enjoy it for a while. I hope you can calm down during this period of time." Chu Tian left after saying this. "You bastard, I'll tear you to 10,000 pieces." The Big Dry Emperor's roar came from the prison. Chu Tian didn't even turn his head, only the little fox on his shoulder turned around to make a face at him. The Big Dry Emperor didn't struggle much before the undead sages activated the helmet together. The Big Dry Emperor's power was completely sealed. Not only could he not use his spirit energy, he couldn't use his divine sense, therefore he couldn't resist this helmet at all. The Big Dry Emperor felt his surroundings change. The chains on his body and the source energy array beneath him all disappeared. When the Big Dry Emperor looked around, he found that he had appeared in a normal family's room. It was completely empty inside. There was only a table and a chair. The Big Dry Emperor angrily threw the chair against the wall, but after 3-5 seconds, the pieces gathered together and returned to their original state. The Big Dry Emperor found that in this spiritual space, no matter what he did, he couldn't change it in the slightest. Even the sunlight shining through the window never changed. This place was like an unchanging painting that had lasted for hundreds of millions of years. The time flow in this spiritual space was 300 times that of the outside world. This meant that if the Big Dry Emperor was locked up in Miracle City's prison for one day, he would need to spend an entire 300 days here. If he was locked up for 10 days, that would be 3,000 days. 1 month, 2 months? 1 year and a half? 10 years, 20 years? The Big Dry Emperor's heart suddenly filled with a kind of hard-to-suppress fear. Chu Tian didn't want him to suffer any physical pain, but this kind of treatment far surpassed any kind of punishment the Big Dry Emperor could imagine. What kind of person was the Big Dry Emperor? He once controlled the Big Dry Empire and slaughtered in all directions. Wherever he went, no one dared to disobey him. How overbearing and arrogant was that? Now that he was locked up in this small room that would never change, he could be locked up for hundreds or even thousands of years. There was no one to talk to, nothing to do, and no way to resist. The Big Dry Emperor, an emperor that could control the lives and deaths of millions with a wave of his hand, suddenly turned into a pitiful worm that would never change. This kind of change was hard for normal people to imagine. Chu Tian. Come out for me. Let me out. The Big Dry Emperor crazily roared out in the spiritual space, but this kind of action had no meaning. This was the effect Chu Tian wanted. He knew that the Big Dry Emperor would be filled with anger towards him, so there was no hope of negotiating with him in this situation. So Chu Tian didn't discuss anything and first put a helmet on him, letting him curse in the spiritual space for 10-20 years until he was satisfied. In such an environment, no matter how hot-tempered or ruthless a person was, they would probably cool down in 10 or 20 years. After all, he wouldn't be able to do anything for 10-20 years. He wouldn't be able to go out, he wouldn't be able to cultivate, and he wouldn't be able to communicate. He could only sit in this broken place. Just thinking about this was terrifying. Chu Tian didn't think it was excessive. There had to be an extreme method to deal with an extreme person. Right now, Meng Qingwu was leading a group of envoys to the Big Dry Empire to negotiate with the Big Dry Empire's nobles. It was unknown how long it would take for them to come back, but it was a good thing that Miracle City had several super smart brains to take care of it. The advantage of these smart brains was that they wouldn't make mistakes, but their weakness was that they weren't good at taking risks, but that didn't matter. Miracle City was very stable right now, so they didn't need to take any risks. Now that Miracle City was no longer a threat, the biggest task was to increase Miracle City's technology investment and coordinate the progress of the various projects, especially the new transport towers, communication equipment, and the production of the Miracle helmets. In short, Miracle City had several dozen projects at the same time, so it was hard to coordinate the manpower, so it was best to leave everything to the smart brains. Chu Tian directly gave an order to the smart brain. 0, I need to order a batch of materials. 0 immediately replied, I'm very happy to serve you. What materials does the city lord need? Chu Tian directly listed out a large list of materials. There were over 20 kinds of immortal herbs and he estimated that it would cost around 1 billion source stones. What kind of concept was 1 billion source stones? This was a large sum of money that normal kingdoms would find hard to gather even if they sold their treasuries. 0 said without any hesitation, send out requests through various channels. I ask Sir City Lord to wait for the good news. Chu Tian was very satisfied with this. Wasn't the company created for this goal? Each of these materials were scattered all over the continent. If there wasn't Miracle Commerce, the space warehouse, and the powerful communication system, even an emperor wouldn't be able to gather all these materials in just a few years. Moreover, the entire process would cost a large amount of money. Chu Tian casually gave the smart brain a list of materials. Now he could just sit and wait for the materials to be gathered. After Chu Tian finished these two matters, the little fox excitedly ran in front of Chu Tian. It was holding something in its claws as it waved its hands at Chu Tian. This is the miracle helmet. Chu Tian found that the thing in the little fox's hands was actually a helmet that was smaller than a fist. When Chu Tian wasn't in Miracle City, the little fox actually ran to the laboratory and had the Miracle Commerce people make a custom helmet for it. This helmet was made for the little fox. You also want to play on the Miracle Continent? The little fox nodded. It put the helmet on its head and waved its claws at Chu Tian. Chu Tian was very curious about what the little fox would look like on the Miracle Continent, therefore he also put on his helmet. When he entered the Miracle Continent, he immediately went to the designated location to see the little fox. Fuck, you're a fox? Chu Tian stared dumbfoundedly at the person who appeared in front of him. It was a little girl who looked like she was carved out of jade. She looked about 7 or 8 years old and had 2 ponytails. She looked very sweet and cute. Her appearance was no different from a human child. The only distinguishing feature was that she had 5 white fox tails on her back. This is a hidden race that the God of Order specially created for me, the demonic race. At this moment, the little girl opened her mouth to speak. Her tone was indeed very ostentatious, but her voice was childish and childish. My strength is still not enough. If I can cultivate 9 tails, I can also transform into this in the real world. Chu Tian was instantly speechless. This little fox could speak on the miracle continent, and it could even activate a hidden demonic race. This was just too incredible. Chapter 644. As soon as Chu Tian went online, the others felt it because the miracle helmet had a built-in friend function. As long as they added each other's spiritual address book, when the person in the spiritual address book logged onto the miracle continent, the other people on the miracle continent would receive a notification. Meng Yingying quickly called Chu Tian over to gather with them. "You're the little fox? Wah, too cute. Quickly come over and let elder sister pinch your face." When everyone learned that the little monster girl was the little fox, they were all stunned, so they all came over to be intimate with her. After all, if one didn't know the little fox's nature, just based on her innocent and cute appearance, it was enough to kill both men and women, making people have a good impression of her. The little fox was filled with pride, not feeling any shame at all. She was also very happy right now. After all, if she relied on normal cultivation to evolve, it would take a long time for her to reach the 9-tailed monster fox level. Now that she had the ability to transform because of the miracle helmet, this was naturally a very good thing. "Where are you preparing to go? Young miss, why are you here?" Chu Tian was very surprised to find that other than Yingying, Nangong, Vivian, Feng Kaidai, Jin Luo, Yun Xiao, Yun Yao, and several other emperors, there was a large group of people gathered here. Most of the Forest Alliance's high-level members were here, as well as various kings and nobles. There was also a very familiar figure among them. Young Miss Meng Qingwu? Didn't the young miss secretly run off to the Big Dry Empire? Chu Tian understood after thinking about it. The Big Dry Empire didn't have a transport tower, so if the young miss wanted to go to the Big Dry Empire, she could only take the air transportation. This trip would take 2-3 days. The young miss had nothing to do, so couldn't she just put on the helmet and play with everyone? Like this, she would appear in front of these people all day and no one would guess that the young miss was heading to the Big Dry Empire, achieving her goal of deceiving everyone. The young miss really was very cunning. "Boss, you and the little fox came at the right time." The orc Nangong Yun slapped the table and said, "Everyone has discovered a dog-head men village outside the city. We have failed several times before. Tonight, everyone has gathered several thousand people. Everyone is determined to take this village, so you should come and help." Chu Tian had nothing to do, so he nodded. "I'll play with you guys." The Miracle Continent was rich in entertainment, adding all kinds of challenging content. It mainly included competitions between people, trials, and adventures in the wild. Apart from hunting monsters in the wild, the most important and interesting setting was to conquer a town. Every city on the Miracle Continent other than the Sacred City could be attacked. Whoever could take a city in battle would have the right to use it, which had a very high value. After all, every town and village had their own teleportation towers, warehouses, and other related facilities. Just a single teleportation tower was enough to provide tempting benefits. For example, the Kobold village that they had just discovered was actually a small town that was half a day's journey from the Holy City. If they didn't conquer this Kobold village, then they would have to travel for half a day's journey every time they wanted to go further. However, once the Kobold village was conquered, they would be able to directly teleport from the Holy City to the Kobold village, and then set off from there. Wouldn't that save a lot of time? If anyone could occupy this town, they would immediately obtain large benefits. Also, attacking this kind of place had very tempting spoils of war. Therefore, anyone with a bit of ambition wouldn't let go of this kind of good chance. An entire 3,000 people participated in the battle. There were people from Miracle Commerce, people from the Forest Alliance, people from the various empires, as well as other kings and nobles among the 3,000 people. When these people saw that Miracle Commerce's Chu Tian had come to join in on the fun, everyone was very shocked. Your Miracle Commerce already has a sacred city. Could it be that they didn't think it was enough? They actually came to steal this kind of place. But this also showed the fairness of Miracle Commerce. Even if Miracle Commerce wanted to obtain a small town, they still had to fight for it. It could be seen that these advantages were the same for everyone, there wouldn't be any bias. The Kobold village was already in front of them. According to the reports, the Kobold village had over 10,000 kobolds, with cultivations between the 3rd and 6th body refinement layers. This was still quite difficult for everyone at this stage. Because no matter how good their luck was, they could only reach the 3rd body refinement layer at most. But it didn't matter. The body refinement realm was a basic realm, so the difference in strength wasn't that big. These people were all in the true spirit realm in the real world, and there were quite a few experts in the peak of the heaven domain realm. Even if they fell to the body refinement realm, it wasn't hard for them to use techniques to offset 3-4 layers of cultivation. Not to mention that these people were rich, spending source stones to buy weapons like crossbows. They wouldn't care about these weapons in the real world, but in this place, in front of people in the body refinement realm, these weapons were very valuable. Prepare to attack. Although there were 3-4 thousand people participating in the battle, there were at least 10 different powers that didn't see eye to eye with each other. After all, they were now competitors. People didn't wait for more people to arrive before they couldn't help moving. The race the Burning Heaven Emperor chose was a stone human race. He waved his stone arm as he commanded, "Quickly, quickly." It was like he was afraid someone would steal it if he was a step late. Several hundred warriors immediately charged forward. Although the Miracle Continent tried to be as fair as possible, it was impossible to be 100% fair. Real-world source stones could be used on the Miracle Continent to create characters, revive, and run businesses, but they couldn't be used to buy herbs or secret manuals. Even if it was a transaction between people, there was still a tax. But this didn't stop these Emperor-level characters. Which one of them didn't control an area in the real world, controlling billions of people? Was it possible for them to start at the same starting line as normal people? They directly gave the most elite guards a helmet, and these people would be able to help them fight from the start? Although they couldn't sell herbs, they could still buy support items like this crossbow. Because of the large value of the current stage, the price of the crossbow was very high. But how could the other Emperor-level characters care about this bit of source stones? They directly bought large amounts of crossbows to hunt monsters. Although there was a tax restriction on the transaction, this didn't affect the Emperor-level characters. They could obtain various pills and secret manuals from their subordinates. With these resources, how could the Emperor's growth be slower than others? The troops the Burning Heaven Emperor brought were all local elites. They never thought that after coming to the Miracle Continent for a few days, they would be reprimanded like they were worthless. Now they could only slaughter in all directions to restore their image. The Doghead Men's village looked very simple. Just as the name implied, the Kobold village was built on a mountain, which increased the difficulty of attacking it to a certain extent. The Burning Heaven Emperor was eager to gain merit. When he led his trusted troops to the village, he found that the others had already been left far behind. There was no one else left or right, which made his heart feel a bit scared. This is bad. Could it be that they didn't come? The Burning Heaven Emperor's worries were already too late. The gates of the village opened and there was the howling of dogs. There were several hundred strong dog-head men holding all kinds of weapons. They had faces filled with rage as they looked at these fellows that had recklessly charged into the village. So. Arrows flew out, releasing ear-piercing whistles. The Burning Heaven Emperor couldn't dodge. Kill for me. Several hundred people began a fierce battle with the Doghead Men warriors. The Doghead Men warriors were fierce, and there were many of them. Under the wild barrage of arrows from both sides, the Burning Heaven Emperor's people fell one after another. The Burning Heaven Emperor angrily roared out and wanted to personally attack, but 7-8 arrows landed on his body and this respected Great Earth Emperor was turned into a porcupine. Damn. You fellows. You actually sent this emperor to his death. The Burning Heaven Emperor angrily roared. He helplessly turned into light and disappeared. The Burning Heaven Emperor had already been killed. He could choose to revive in 7 days or he could choose to pay source stones to revive. Who told this fellow to be so stupid? The Wind Moon Empress saw the Burning Heaven Emperor being killed in front of her and said in a mocking tone, "You're looking for death and you're blaming us, truly an idiot." However, according to the Burning Heaven Emperor's probing, everyone discovered that the kobolds were stronger than they had imagined. They immediately began to adjust their strategy. In this situation, it was clearly not the time to be distracted by internal strife. Based on the number of people who had come to attack, if they wanted to successfully seize the stronghold, they would have to work together. Have the people that cultivate defensive cultivation techniques come out. These dog-headmen archers have very strong archery skills. We have to form a defensive line to block the arrows, otherwise it will be hard to charge into the village. All of the major factions gathered together the people who had cultivated defensive secret arts and had these people stand at the front to defend against the kobolds' attacks. The others would follow closely behind and attack the kobold stronghold. The Sacred City Army and the Dog-Head-Men Army clashed again and people began to fight in front of the village. Finally, there was a loud explosion. The village's gate was successfully broken through. Everyone killed their way from the entrance to the center of the village. Although the Dog-Head-Men weren't weak in numbers and battle strength, they didn't have any intelligence, so they couldn't fight properly. The warriors from the Sacred City were all famous experts in the real world. Although they were very weak, their battle awareness was still there, so they quickly gained the advantage and forced the Dog-Head-Men to retreat. 2 hours later, there were less than 1,000 Dog-Head-Men left. Just when everyone thought that they could win, something unexpected happened. From the large tent in the center of the Dog-Head-Men village, a black-furred dog-head-man suddenly charged out. It held 2 blades as it charged at the crowd like a windmill. Instantly there was a flash of light in the crowd. It was simply like a bulldozer. More than a dozen people were killed. The Wind Moon Empress angrily shouted, "What are you doing?" "Hey, that miracle commerce person over there, this fellow is clearly in the body refinement realm. How could his battle strength reach the awakened soul realm? How did you plan this?" "That's right. Preposterous." The Wild Beast Empire's Wild Beast Emperor was also very dissatisfied. "Your plan is not reasonable at all. You clearly knew this would happen, but you didn't even give us a warning. Everyone has misunderstood. This Dog-Head-Men leader is the leader monster of an area. In our design, the leader monster is several times stronger than normal monsters, so it is normal for it to have this kind of battle strength." Meng Qingwu explained while dodging. "As for the design of the scene, that is even more unfair to us. The Miracle Continent has over 600 large cities and tens of thousands of small villages. There are also all kinds of wild terrain, thousands of trial scenes, and hundreds of millions of monsters. If every detail was designed by our company's employees, we wouldn't be able to create the Miracle Continent in 100 years. Chu Tian added, "The Miracle Continent is created by the combination of many super smart brains. We only gave them the general situation, the basic laws, and the main cities, so as for the details of the continent, even the people involved don't understand it." "So it was like this. What are you saying this for now?" Nangong Yun raised her mace as she charged at the Dog-Head-Men leader. "Let's get rid of him first." Chapter 645. The Dog-Head-Men leader sent Nangong Yun's mace flying with a blade. With another slash, Nangong Yun disappeared without a trace. Nangong. Vivian was a flower fairy now, so her small body was very nimble. She immediately circled around the Dog-Head-Men's body, trying to restrain them. She never thought that the Dog-Head-Men would give a loud roar and Vivian's mind would shake. It was like she had been attacked on a spiritual level and she fainted on the spot. Shwa. A wave passed. Vivian had also been resurrected. Meng Yingying was shocked. Even Vivian had been killed. Go, go, go. Everyone go. These large characters that could summon the wind and rain in the real world all charged forward. In the end, the Dog-Head-Men leader did not have any problems even after being hit by several dozen arrows. Rather, it raised its 2 blades and wildly chopped down, killing over 100 people. The Wind Moon Empress cried out in alarm as she was hacked to death. Eunice, Lancelot, and these real-world experts could not even take a single blow from the Dog-Head-Men leader. They were all sent to heaven in a single move. "Don't retreat, we won't really die anyways. We have to exhaust him to death. Whoever can kill the Dog-Head-Men leader, this village will belong to that person." The Dog-Head-Men leader's vitality was very strong. Even when facing everyone's attacks, he did not fall into a disadvantage at all. The two giant blades were raised and an incomparably fierce blade chi storm appeared. Chu Tian, the Meng Yingying sisters, Yun Xiao, Yun Yao, Feng Kai Dai, and the others were all within the range of the blade chi. When the crisscrossing white blade chi swept over, they did not even have a chance to dodge. They were all covered by it and finally turned into white light that disappeared. Damn! The Miracle Commerce Group had all been killed. It was destined that they would not be able to obtain this village. Miracle Commerce's own people were this miserable, so it could be seen that they did not know anything about this. The Doghead Men leader's spirit energy seemed to be endless. As his injuries became heavier, his attacks became fiercer and fiercer. Every time he sent out a blade chi, it would kill a group of people. But no matter how strong the Doghead Men leader was, he had no way of defending against this endless encirclement. Finally, there was an anguished wail. The Kobold leader finally fell to the ground. Its corpse dropped a large number of spoils of war, including the 2 kukri blades he used, a large number of pills, materials, and so on. Everyone knew that this was the Kobold Stronghold's Lord's medallion. Quick, grab it! The Wild Beast Emperor hurriedly shouted. Everyone had expended so much effort to take down the Kobold village. Wasn't it for the sake of seizing the initiative and obtaining this stronghold? Now that the Lord's token was right in front of them, these people who were fighting side by side just a moment ago immediately became hostile to each other. In the end, they killed each other to snatch the token. The Wild Beast Emperor directly threatened, "Who dares to fight with this emperor? This emperor will destroy his country." For a token, they actually threatened to destroy their country. This fellow was really hopeless. These people didn't care about him at all. Since everyone had come to the Miracle Continent, they had changed their faces and even their races, so how could the Wild Beast Emperor know their true race and country? Not to mention that the continent was so big and everyone was in different areas. Even if you were an empire, how could it be easy to destroy a country? While everyone was fighting for the token, no one noticed that from a gap between everyone, a little snow-white fox suddenly came out. She quickly jumped in front of the token and used her mouth to grab the token, immediately escaping from the crowd. The Lord's token had to be held for a period of time before it could take effect. Whoever obtained the Lord's token would become everyone's target. After the little fox obtained the Lord's token, she suddenly disappeared. The little fox was a member of the demonic race, so her innate talent did not disappear on the Miracle Continent. Relying on her teleportation ability, she left everyone behind. After around a quarter of an hour, there was a golden light that fell from the sky onto the little fox. The first lord of the Kobold Stronghold was born. Everyone's lungs were about to explode from anger seeing this. Everyone had spent a large amount of time and energy, but it was finally taken away by the unknown little fox. The little fox suddenly turned into a little girl with a flash of light. Her eyes turned into crescent moons from smiling and her 2 little hands held the large token. She said in a childish voice, "I'm selling it, who wants it?" Everyone was stunned. The Wild Beast Emperor looked around. The other people on the same level as him had already been killed in battle. He immediately revealed a look of wild joy as he pushed through the crowd. "What price do you want, say it?" The 2 of them haggled over the price. Finally, the Wild Beast Emperor opened the bank and sent 100 million source stones to the little fox's private account. The little fox straightforwardly gave the Lord's token to the Wild Beast Emperor. This was a happy situation for everyone. Although 100 million source stones was not a small number to the Wild Beast Emperor, it wasn't enough to cut off their flesh. This Kobold stronghold in the Wild Beast Emperor's hands was worth more than 100 million source stones. The little fox had no use for the stronghold, so she could use this chance to earn some money. She opened her spiritual account and 100 million source stones was sent in, which made the little fox very satisfied. Although her master was very rich, that fellow was too stingy. She had to earn money herself these days. With this starting capital, the little fox could obtain some insider information. She was prepared to earn a large sum in both the real world and the virtual world. Ha ha ha! This came from the Wild Beast Emperor. The other competitors had already been taken care of by the kobold leader, otherwise how could it be this easy to buy a lord with just 100 million source stones? It had to be known that this was the Miracle Continent's first private lord. Just the face earned was worth more than 100 million source stones. The wild beast emperor sent his subordinates to search the stronghold. Emperor, we found many treasure chests in the warehouse. They are all spoils of war. Emperor, we found a transport tower in the center of the stronghold. It has already been activated to transport to the sacred city. Emperor, we found a recruitment field in the stronghold's training camp. We can use source stones to buy kobolds to guard the stronghold for us. Emperor, we found a trial tower for the kobold stronghold. It seems like it can open a trial space for the stronghold. All kinds of harvests and reports came in, making the wild beast emperor unable to close his mouth. There was no need to mention the value of the space warehouse, the spoils of war, and the transport tower. The kobold training camp was a very important place because the kobold stronghold could be attacked by others. In order to protect their territory, they had to buy large amounts of kobolds, which required source stones. But what did this bit of expenditure count for to an emperor? The last pleasant surprise was the kobold trial field. Although the wild beast emperor was a spirit beast, since he could become an emperor, he definitely wasn't stupid. He had already realized what decided the value of a stronghold. First was the location. For example, a town's location was very good and there were very precious hunting grounds or resource fields around it. Or perhaps this town was at the edge of the current exploration area, so if one wanted to explore further, they had to go through this place. Then this town would have a very high value. The kobold stronghold was half a day's journey from the sacred city. It was without a doubt the furthest place. Moreover, there were many hunting grounds and resource fields around it that could increase one's strength early on, so it had a very high value in the early stages. If the location and surrounding resources were external factors, then the internal factors of a town were even more important. If a city had a complete set of facilities like a space warehouse, arena, trial field, business street, tavern, theater, real estate, and etc., then this city would easily attract people to settle down, so it would naturally have value. The kobold stronghold was just a trivial stronghold. Of course it wasn't this complete, but it had a special trial field. The name of this exclusive training field was Kobold's Herb Garden. The materials used to produce it included low-grade yuan essence grass and low-grade life grass. In the real world, everyone knew that yuan essence grass was a recovery herb, and everyone knew that life grass was a healing herb. Now that the Miracle Continent had just been opened, this kind of resource was in short supply. Countless people would come to the kobold stronghold to challenge the trial field and obtain large amounts of herbs. Whether it was for personal use or to sell, it was very valuable. Whether it was using the legends of the kobold stronghold or challenging the trial field of the kobold stronghold, it was very valuable. The wild beast emperor had picked up a large bargain this time. After the wind moon emperor and the burning heaven emperor learned of the situation, they were seething with anger. They never would have thought that this barbarian would pick up such a large bargain. But they were not discouraged. Wasn't it just a broken stronghold? There were many places like this around the sacred city. They had to find one and occupy it. This was not just a fight for benefits. This was a fight for face between the emperors. The Wind Moon Emperor gave an order to the domestic helmet production department. From now on, when the helmets were produced, they would buy 20% of them internally. She now realized that selling all the helmets was a mistake. She should have prepared an army to compete in the virtual world. If she had done this before, she wouldn't have lost to anyone. The other emperors all followed suit. In short, the Miracle Continent had only been open for a few days and these people were already like a raging fire, playing very intensely. Other than the intense competition for territories and resources, the Miracle Continent's academies were also preparing to open. Other than that, the spiritual library, spiritual research facility, arena, and etc., they were all being used. The charm of the Miracle Continent was quickly blossoming. I'm about to reach the Big Dry Empire. Meng Qingwu received a message from the real world. Now, my diplomatic group will begin working in the Big Dry Empire. How is it going on your side? Chu Tian revealed a smile. I've already finished half of it, I don't need to worry about my side at all. Alright, then I'm assured. Meng Qingwu bid farewell to everyone after saying this. She took off her helmet and prepared to work. Chapter 646. Night fell on the Miracle Continent and the sacred city became even more bustling. The sacred city's Miracle Grand Hotel became a popular place for people to spend their money. The Miracle Continent was very similar to the real world, but it wasn't the same as the real world. For example, the Miracle Continent made people feel hungry just like the real world. But there was a difference between an illusion and reality. In the real world, if one didn't eat for a long time and couldn't replenish their energy, even the strongest cultivator would find it hard to endure it, dying in the end. Even if people felt hungry on the Miracle Continent, it wouldn't directly kill them. In other words, as long as they could endure the discomfort and pain of hunger, they wouldn't die even if they didn't drink anything for 5 years. This was the main difference between the Miracle Continent and the real world. The rich could spend their days on the Miracle Continent, tasting all the delicacies in the world. Normal people could eat delicacies that were hard to taste in the real world. If the poor could endure hunger, they could eat once every few days or even once every few months. Of course, most people couldn't endure the discomfort of hunger. Since they could enter the Miracle Continent, it wasn't like they couldn't even eat. Not to mention that under extreme hunger, the strength of their spirit energy would be greatly reduced, so it wasn't good for adventuring or production. The flow of time on the Miracle Continent was slower than the real world. This meant that eating 3 meals in the real world would be eating 9 or even 10 meals on the Miracle Continent. The food and beverage industry was a very important source of income. In the future, when the Miracle Continent had hundreds of millions of people, Miracle Commerce would have a large profit margin in the food and beverage industry. The Miracle Sacred City's advantage was that from the moment the continent opened, all the facilities were complete. This also meant that for a long time in the future, the Miracle Sacred City would have a monopoly on food and beverage, lodging, entertainment, and etc. Of course, there would never be a lack of smart people. Now there were some smart merchants that began to pay attention to the potential of the Miracle Continent, spending large amounts of money to buy stores in the Miracle City's sacred city. They would sell them when the price increased in the future, while also investing in food and entertainment. These services didn't affect the balance of the Miracle Continent that much, therefore real-world source stones could be used here. If they could take the lead in the market, there would be a large profit margin. The Miracle Continent was filled with life. Almost everyone was fighting like they were on stimulants. This was because everyone here could become an expert of the Miracle Continent, and there was not just one path to becoming an expert. Some people could find special secret realms, ruins, and treasures in the wild, or they could kill special monsters to obtain precious treasures and secret manuals, soaring into the sky. Some people could also form their own forces and gather manpower to attack cities and plunder territories to become a hegemon. Some people could stay at home and walk the purely commercial route, earning huge profits by reselling resources and investing in virtual assets. They could purchase medicinal ingredients, pills, and equipment from other adventurers and develop into the top experts. A diverse world could not be short of ways to play. Adventure, domination, and business were the main ways of playing on the Miracle Continent. But that wasn't the only way to play. The Miracle Continent was filled with endless possibilities. He would give a few normal examples now. The Holy City was rich in cultural, entertainment, competitive content, and related construction. Now, a set of professional players had been born. Contestants fought in the virtual arena. During this process, they could defeat their enemies and obtain victory rewards. Contestants did not have to run around to hunt or participate in trials. Even if they became professional contestants, they could still continue to grow stronger. Other than that, the natural entertainment value of the competition was enough to create a trend. An outstanding competition would attract the attention of many commoners, and it could even be broadcasted in the real world, allowing the entire world to watch the competition. This was without a doubt a good time to create a star of the competition. Various powers would place people with talent in the arena to train themselves. Other than the competition, researching knowledge or creating an outstanding film or artwork, They could obtain source stones or pills and herbs in the virtual world according to their value or popularity. In short, whether it was adventure, domination, business, competition, creation, or learning, the entire world was built on a very complex but fair system. Therefore, as long as one could reach the peak in any field, they could become a person above everyone else in the virtual world. This was the most attractive part of the Miracle Continent. Chu Tian left the Miracle Continent and first looked over a set of data. There were several million people on the Miracle Continent, and in just a few short days, they had already spent over 500 million. The main spending was on real estate, food, tools, shopping malls, and various services. There weren't many people entering the Miracle Continent in the first batch, but their spending power was shockingly high. The retention rate of these people was very high. Even emperors like the Wind Moon Empress and the Wild Beast Emperor were all infatuated with the Miracle Continent. This was also understandable. No matter which great emperor it was in the real world, whether it was cultivation or influence, they had already developed to the peak and reached a bottleneck. There was not much room for them to break through. Now that there was suddenly a new world with unlimited potential and extremely interesting, how could it not stimulate their desire to compete? Chu Tian looked over the data and found that the emperors had spent 80 to 90% of their time on the Miracle Continent. Unless there was something very important in the real world, they were too lazy to leave. The emperors had already started to build virtual estates and royal palaces in the Miracle Sacred City. It could be seen that they were prepared to move their offices from the real world to the Miracle Continent in the future. The estates on the Miracle Continent were an important source of income. The sacred city was very big, and the various luxurious palaces and residences could attract the desire of the emperors and normal people. It would be another high source of income for the Miracle Continent in the future. Chu Tian was filled with confidence in the Miracle Continent. The super smart brain Zero reminded Chu Tian, "Sir City Lord, the materials you ordered have all been bought. Do you need to use them now?" "You bought them this quickly?" Chu Tian was very surprised because the materials he ordered were not normal materials. It had only been this long and they had all been bought. This kind of speed was very shocking. "Send them all to my laboratory space warehouse. I need to use them now." Chu Tian came to his personal laboratory and opened the space warehouse, taking out all the materials. More than 10 supreme-grade medicinal herbs were placed in all kinds of exquisite immortal jade boxes and laid out. Any one of these materials was enough to make countless Heaven Domain realm experts fight over them, but now Miracle Commerce had sent them over millions of miles from every corner of the world in just 2 short days. This was Miracle Commerce's current strength. This was Miracle Commerce's current influence. The little fox was like a cat that smelled fish, immediately revealing a greedy expression that wanted to steal a bite. "Go die to the side. Don't think that I don't know that you've just earned a large amount on the Miracle Continent. If you add in the materials you stole from the Miracle Gardens and other places, you should be worth at least 300-500 million source stones. If you steal a single immortal herb from me, I'll freeze your account and confiscate all your things." The little fox was so angry that its fur was about to explode. "That was earned by this fox with my own strength. What right do you have to do this? Even if I steal things from the garden and the warehouse, it was stolen by this fox with my own strength." Chu Tian waved his hand at the indignant fox and said, all right, I'm going to refine pills. This alchemy is very important, so go play on the side and don't disturb me." The little fox was filled with indignation. This fox had gone through life and death with you for so long, you actually didn't give this fox any face. The little fox directly left in a fit of anger. Now that the little fox had tasted the sweetness, she was prepared to take a stroll in Miracle City. Wasn't it easy to earn money with one's own strength? The little fox decided to personally start a business on the Miracle Continent. Chu Tian sent the little fox away, and he began to gather his spiritual energy and divine sense. With a gentle wave of his left hand, the ancient bronze cauldron floated into the air. Chu Tian infused his divine sense into the ancient cauldron and saw the source energy array lines on it light up. Chu Tian raised his hands high up, and with a loud roar, spirit energy surged out of his body. The auxiliary refining equipment in the laboratory also released spirit energy. Several kinds of energy were released at the same time. The ancient cauldron's source energy alchemy array began to show its effects. Chu Tian's personal strength was not weak, and Miracle City's laboratory could provide an endless supply of pure spirit energy. This spirit energy was directly extracted from source stones, so it was as pure as a human's. Chu Tian's spirit energy was mainly used as a guide in this process. The divine herb from the moon god's palace was taken out. A small piece was taken out and he placed it into the cauldron to be refined. After 7 days and 7 nights, the cauldron released a dazzling glow. The pill was born from it. It was like the rising sun, giving off a dazzling light. Chu Tian did not waste any time. It was hard to find a material to seal this pill even in Miracle City, and if it was left here for too long, the medicinal energy would be lost. Even if a little bit of this divine pill was lost, it would be a large loss. Chu Tian picked up the pill and swallowed it. Then, he sat cross-legged and started cultivating. The vast spiritual energy in his body flowed like a sea. He had been stuck in the first heaven domain layer for a long time, and Chu Tian hadn't made no progress in this period of time. Miracle Commerce had such a strong advantage in resources and production, so each high-level member of the company ate pills as snacks. Chu Tian was not an exception. He had to swallow an immortal pill every day to increase his cultivation. Accumulating like this without immediately breaking through made the foundation in Chu Tian's body become more and more solid. This elixir had undoubtedly detonated the sea of elemental energy in his body. Spiritual energy instantly permeated every part of his body and was refined in his meridians. Finally, it turned into pure and primitive elemental energy, making him feel as if every meridian was filled with elemental energy like a raging river. There was no suspense at all. Chu Tian directly broke through a layer. This was just the beginning because most of the spirit energy in his body hadn't been refined yet. Especially the divinity contained in the pill, this was something that was rarely seen in pills before. When Chu Tiankai's spirit energy was fully absorbed, he very quickly reached a bottleneck and in the end, smoothly broke through another layer of cultivation. He was in the 3rd heaven domain layer. Chu Tian's cultivation was still lacking compared to the emperor's, but with his methods and abilities, even if the emperors wanted to deal with him, it wouldn't be easy. He now had the ability to fight against the giants of the alliance, so he was one of the peak experts on the continent. Chapter 647. Chu Tian spent an entire 10 days to break through and then spent another 10 days to consolidate his cultivation. After he finished, Chu Tian wasn't in a rush to leave the laboratory. He stayed in the laboratory for a while and no one knew what he was doing during this time. When Chu Tian finally came out of the laboratory, it was because of Meng Qingwu contacting him. Meng Qingwu had contacted Chu Tian. The Big Dry Empire's work had already made a breakthrough. It can't be this fast. Chu Tian knew that the young Miss efficiency wasn't low, but it had only been a month. How could she have made this kind of breakthrough? Normally speaking, a month wasn't enough to walk through the entire Big Dry Empire. Chu Tian communicated with the young miss in order to understand the situation. Meng Qingwu described the entire matter in detail in the spiritual space. Meng Qingwu wasn't going to the Deqian Empire alone. Instead, she was leading a team of a few hundred diplomatic officials. Meng Qingwu didn't need to go through the trouble of running all over the Deqian Empire. Her job was mainly to oversee the central government and make arrangements. Most of the actual operations were done by her subordinates. When Miracle City's team arrived at the Big Dry Empire, the Big Dry Empire was already in a chaotic state. This was because the Big Dry Empire had suffered another defeat, and this defeat was even worse than the previous ones. The entire empire was covered in a layer of dark clouds. Their status as a large country had disappeared. The most direct impact was the diplomatic relations maintained by the country's prestige. The Big Dry Empire's subordinate countries had already decided to stop paying tribute to the Big Dry Empire under the incitement of all sides. Some of them even betrayed the Big Dry Empire to become independent or join other powers. This caused the Big Dry Empire to suffer an unprecedented loss because an empire had at least several warring kingdoms attached to it, and there were hundreds of small and large countries. The large countries relied on the protection fees and tributes of the small countries to earn large profits, which was a large part of the country's income. After the Big Dry Empire experienced two large defeats and the Big Dry Emperor being captured, the Big Dry Empire's citizens' confidence had greatly decreased. Even the nobles were very pessimistic about the Big Dry Empire's future. Not only was Miracle City becoming stronger, its development speed could be described as 1,000 miles a day, creating a new world almost every day. In this kind of situation, what could they use to protect the small countries? The Big Dry Empire had such a large grudge with Miracle City, it was already a problem if they could protect themselves. The Deqian Empire was definitely not in the mood to manage these small countries. Moreover, because of the possibility of a bigger war breaking out, it was very likely that the vassal countries would increase protection fees and tribute in the future. It would be strange if these small countries did not choose to defect. The Big Dry Empire couldn't destroy the Forest Alliance even at its peak, so it was even more impossible now or in the future. The only allies they could rope in were the Highland Alliance and the Howling Sky Empire, but now they had broken off relations with the Big Dry Empire because of the defeat of the Allied army. These two empire powers followed the trend, and like the other empire-level powers of the continent, they took the initiative to establish relations with Miracle City. This filled the Big Dry Empire with fear. Now among the empire-level powers of the continent, other than a few secluded existences that had secluded themselves for thousands of years, as long as they weren't a part of the secular world, they were all working with Miracle City. The Big Dry Empire could be said to be an orphan of the world. Miracle City's status was rising, and Miracle Commerce's technology and products kept coming out, allowing every country on the continent to embrace the new era and develop quickly. Only the Big Dry Empire maintained its original style. It was because Miracle City's status was becoming higher and higher on the continent that the Big Dry Empire's power was declining. This was because everyone knew that the Big Dry Empire and Miracle City were enemies. Now that they were fighting for technology, no one wanted to fall behind. No matter how big or small the countries were, they all cut off their relationship with the Big Dry Empire. There were even quite a few that became enemies with the Big Dry Empire in order to curry favor with Miracle City. This background was fully used by Meng Qingwu. Meng Qingwu first met the leaders of the Highland Alliance and the Howling Sky Empire through a spiritual conference on the way to the Big Dry Empire, finally turning hostility into friendship with the two empires. Miracle Commerce would use very generous conditions to build transport, logistics, and communication systems for the two empires. The two empires would use the conditions to put pressure on the Big Dry Empire. Miracle City not only had the support of the six empires now, even the Highland Alliance and the Howling Sky Empire were standing on Miracle City's side. From the western continent to the central continent, Miracle City didn't have any power that could oppose them. The surrounding countries rebelling against the Big Dry Empire was actually related to Meng Qingwu's actions behind the scenes. The emperor was captured, the subordinate countries rebelled, and there were internal and external troubles. They were in imminent danger. Meng Qingwu finally entered the Big Dry Empire at this time, but she didn't directly meet with the high-level members of the Big Dry Empire. Rather, she used various methods and channels, spending hundreds of millions of source stones to buy out all the media channels in the Big Dry Empire. The Big Dry Empire's media was very traditional, mainly using newspapers and letters to send information. This kind of media was very different, so it was impossible for it to be controlled by the central government. The various states of the Big Dry Empire all published shocking news, which was openly and secretly criticizing the Big Dry Emperor and the high-level members of the Big Dry Empire. There were half-truths and half-lies mixed in with all kinds of discrediting information, making the middle and lower-class people think that the Big Dry Empire's current situation was purely because of the Big Dry Emperor and the high-level members' ambition and arrogance. The main culprits for the Big Dry Empire losing over 1 million soldiers were the people in power in the court. Miracle City was purely playing the role of an innocent person in this matter. Other than that, they lost this chance to announce the changes Miracle City's technology had brought to the continent, as well as the consequences of the Big Dry Empire's seclusion. This made countless people understand and yearn for Miracle City's technology and products. It had to be said, Meng Qingwu's move was very good. The main conflict between Miracle City and the Big Dry Empire came from several large battles. Not only did these battles cause large amounts of casualties to the Big Dry Empire, it also caused the Big Dry Empire's national power and influence to decline. Therefore, the Big Dry Empire's citizens hated Miracle City to the bone. The Big Dry Empire's high level invited them to negotiate. They were all rejected by Meng Qingwu. On one hand, she was dragging it out, wearing down their spirit. On the other hand, she was using external pressure and internal persuasion to control the situation from top to bottom. She had already obtained very good results. Now that Meng Qingwu felt the time was ripe, she began to negotiate with the largest families and nobles of the Big Dry Empire. Meng Qingwu's current strategy was very simple. If she could persuade, she would persuade. If she could lure, she would lure. If that didn't work, she would threaten. If that didn't work, she would fight or even assassinate them. The Big Dry Empire was like a group of dragons without a leader. The Big Dry Emperor wasn't here and there was no one to support him. The entire empire's public opinion was turbulent, the subordinate countries were in pieces, and there was even more external pressure. In this kind of situation, with Meng Qingwu's outstanding mediating methods, she was confident that she could take care of the Big Dry Empire's high level in a month. Meng Qingwu said, "I mainly need two things right now. The first is source stones. I need enough source stones to bribe the high-level members. The second is to take care of the Big Dry Emperor as soon as possible. As long as the Big Dry Emperor agrees to our request and has the strongest Emperor clan side with us, it would be considered a success. Use Miracle City's source stones however you want, whether it's 2 billion or 3 billion, even if it's 10 billion, it's worth it. If you don't have enough source stones, you can borrow from other powers. If you don't have enough, you can sell our resources. As long as we can take down the Big Dry Empire, no matter how much we spend, it won't be too expensive." Chu Tian gave Meng Qingwu his absolute support. "You don't need to worry about the Big Dry Emperor, I have ways to subdue him." Meng Qingwu nodded. "All right, since it's like this, then we'll hurry." After Chu Tian exited the communication channel, he calculated the time. The Big Dry Emperor had been in the spiritual cage for 30 days and he had been in the little spiritual world for around 25 years. 25 years. That little room. No matter how strong a person's temperament was, they wouldn't be able to endure 25 years of boredom. No matter how bad a person's temperament was, they should have calmed down after 25 years of solitude. Chu Tian felt it was about time, so he came to the dungeon and decided to see the Big Dry Emperor. From the outside, the Big Dry Emperor didn't seem to have changed at all. After all, only 30 days had passed in the real world. Chu Tian waved his hand at the undead sages guarding this place, and the undead sages came forward to open the Big Dry Emperor's helmet. The Big Dry Emperor suddenly returned to the real world. He looked at the familiar and strange environment around him with a blank expression and then looked at the familiar and strange person in front of him with a blank expression. He had wanted to tear this fellow to pieces countless times, but now that this person had appeared in front of him, he didn't feel that overflowing anger and hatred, there was only helplessness and weakness. In these 25 years of living in the spiritual cage, the Big Dry Emperor had gone crazy and cursed, but he had finally calmed down. He began to think about his life and he began to think about why he had fallen to this state. He began to realize that going against Miracle City was a mistake from the beginning. Chu Tian looked at the Big Dry Emperor with a smile and said, "Your Majesty, we haven't seen each other for 30 days and you seem much calmer. It seems like this helmet is quite useful to you." The Big Dry Emperor said through gritted teeth, "What do you want? Let me out." Chu Tian shook his head. "What do you think I'm lacking? I have money, I have territory, I have status, and now I even have a wife. Do you think you have anything to exchange for your freedom? I'll tell you the truth, I've recently invented an upgraded spiritual helmet. It can slow down the flow of time in the spiritual world to 1%, and when you are locked in the spiritual cage, you will lose your sense of touch, hearing, sight, and movement, only your thoughts will remain. Like this, You will spend the next several hundred years or even several thousand years in remorse and pain. The Big Dry Emperor began to feel fear. Although he was an emperor, he shouldn't be afraid of anything. But that bastard Chu Tian was just too terrifying. The torture tools he invented surpassed any kind of punishment in time. Even if it was a person with a firm will, they wouldn't be able to maintain their rationality under this kind of terrifying punishment. Chu Tian counted with his fingers and said, "I'll consider the Big Dry Emperor's lifespan to be 1,000 years. Even if you have 500 years left, if you are locked in here for 500 years and you wear the helmet, then 500 times 500, you will stay in the spiritual cage for 250,000 years. Oh, this really is a shocking number. It's even longer than the ancient civilization of the continent. I think it's enough for you to see through all the mysteries of life from ancient times to now." Stuff. The Big Dry Emperor lowered his proud head like a blade of grass hit by frost. "What do you want? Just say it." Chu Tian said with a smile, "I don't understand the Big Dry Emperor's meaning." The Big Dry Emperor weakly said, "I'll agree to whatever request you have. In exchange for my freedom." Chu Tian thought about it and said, "This is what the Big Dry Emperor said, so I won't be polite. I want to cooperate with your country. More accurately, it's a fusion." He explained the Federation's plan to the Big Dry Emperor. After the Federation is formed, you can still sit on the throne of the Emperor, possessing most of the administrative power and a small part of the military. But most of the administrative power and the military will be controlled by Miracle City. Only like this can we unite and create an unrivaled giant that can dominate the continent. The Big Dry Emperor's expression changed. He already knew that Chu Tian's conditions wouldn't be simple. He was even prepared to hand over the entire Big Dry Empire's treasury in exchange for his freedom. But the Big Dry Emperor never thought that what Chu Tian wanted wasn't the billions of source stones stored in the treasury over the past 10,000 years, but rather the entire Big Dry Empire. The Big Dry Emperor flew into a rage out of shame. "Chu Tian, don't go too far. The Big Dry Empire was built with the blood of previous emperors. Do you think you can swallow the entire Big Dry Empire with just a single battle?" "What are you saying? I haven't swallowed the Big Dry Empire. The Big Dry Empire is still the Big Dry Empire. The Big Dry Emperor is still the Big Dry Emperor. The citizens are still citizens. Nothing has changed. We are only discussing a more scientific and perfect power structure. After we perfectly merge, I will focus all my attention on Miracle Commerce's technology and products, letting the billions of citizens of the Big Dry Empire obtain unprecedented wealth and power. What's wrong with this? What I sacrifice is just a part of the benefits of those in power. Wishful thinking. It doesn't matter if you don't agree because you still have time. An entire 250,000 years, I think it's enough for you to think about this problem. Other than that, I want to remind you that the Big Dry Empire is on the verge of collapse. All the subordinate countries have already left control and stopped paying tribute. The Highland Alliance and the Howling Sky Empire have already become Miracle City's allies and are planning to invade the Big Dry Empire. What about the Big Dry Empire? That is truly a mess. Over 500 million citizens are rebelling against the empire and over 15 families are leading their cities to separate from the empire to form a kingdom. The royal families have already been pushed aside and all the high-level members are fighting for the imperial palace. No one cares about your life or death. I'll say this much. Chu Tian snapped his fingers twice. Someone, put the new helmet on the Big Dry Emperor. We'll meet again after 2,000 years. The undead sages were about to put the new helmet on the Big Dry Emperor. Slow. The Big Dry Emperor was filled with despair as he said in a dejected voice, "Even if I agree to your request, it's impossible for everyone to agree. This is our job, we will naturally take care of it." "All right, I agree." Chapter 648. It was impossible to know what the Big Dry Emperor was feeling when he made this decision. But it could be said that the Big Dry Emperor had no choice but to grit his teeth to make this decision. But the Big Dry Emperor had no other choice. After all, Chu Tian was just too ruthless. If the Big Dry Emperor didn't agree, he would be imprisoned for 250,000 years in a cruel and painful manner. 250,000 years. The Big Dry Emperor would rather suffer all the cruel punishments in the world than spend 250,000 years in silence, darkness, and loneliness. Not to mention the 250,000 years of spiritual imprisonment in the upgraded spiritual helmet. Even the 25 years of being alone in the spiritual helmet was enough to make him feel like a lifetime had passed. His mentality, thoughts, and spirit had all undergone large changes. Chu Tian crossed his arms across his chest and looked at the Big Dry Emperor with a suspicious gaze. How can I believe you? What if you're just brushing me off and you don't recognize me after a while? Then I'll be treated like a fool. The Big Dry Emperor knew that Chu Tian definitely had a backup plan, so he said with a tired expression, "What do you want? Don't waste time, take it all out." All right. Since the Big Dry Emperor says this, then I won't be polite. Chu Tian took out several pills and added a spiritual contract. These pills are all thought-sensing poisons. After they are ingested, they will immediately go into hibernation and even the highest-level alchemist won't be able to find any problems. This poison will change according to your thoughts. As long as you have thoughts of breaking your promise and take action, they will immediately release and swallow you. Other than that, this spiritual contract is just in case. Both pills and spiritual insurance. He wouldn't be afraid of the Big Dry Emperor betraying him like this. The Big Dry Emperor knew that he couldn't pass this pass no matter what. Any struggle would be futile, so he might as well happily accept it. He swallowed the poison pills that Chu Tian had carefully refined and then signed a spiritual contract. He released a portion of his spirit and sealed it into the contract. Very good, very good. Chu Tian was very satisfied with this result because whether they could swallow the Big Dry Empire or not, at least they had the Big Dry Emperor in their hands. As long as they had the Big Dry Emperor in their hands, the Big Dry Empire would never be enemies with the Forest Alliance. Whether it was advancing or retreating, Miracle City was invincible. Chu Tian reported the good news to his mistress in the Deqian Empire. The young miss never thought that Chu Tian would be able to deal with the Big Dry Emperor so easily. This Big Dry Emperor was one of the emperors of the continent. Making him submit to Miracle City, Meng Qingwu thought it was much harder than taking care of the Big Dry Empire's mob. However, as the saying goes, strengths and weaknesses complement each other. What Chu Tian found difficult to do, Meng Qingwu could do, and what Meng Qingwu found difficult to do, Chu Tian could easily do. With the two of them working together, how could the great Qian Empire not be wiped out? After the Big Dry Emperor gave in, he was released from prison by Chu Tian. From now on, the Big Dry Emperor had temporarily regained his freedom. Chu Tian not only wanted to use methods to make him submit, he also wanted to make him realize his failure in his mind and spirit. During this time, the Big Dry Emperor could freely move around the Forest Alliance's territory. He could take a good look at Miracle City's technology, and Chu Tian even gave him a miracle helmet. After the Big Dry Emperor saw these things, he deeply understood just how strong Miracle City was. He deeply understood just how big the gap between the Big Dry Empire and Miracle City was. The Big Dry Empire couldn't defeat Miracle City before, so there was no hope now. So other than submitting, they had no other choice. Submitting could at least be exchanged for wealth and prosperity. If they resisted, there would only be death and destruction. Like this, another half a month passed. Meng Qingwu suddenly commanded Chu Tian. His work in the Big Dry Empire was pretty much done, so he had Chu Tian bring the Big Dry Emperor back to the Big Dry Empire. Without another word, Chu Tian called the 4 leaders of the alliance and formed a group of envoys to escort the Big Dry Emperor back to the Big Dry Empire. Both sides held a welcoming ceremony and a negotiation ceremony. In the eyes of the other powers that didn't know the truth, it was just some kind of agreement between Miracle City and the Big Dry Empire. In the end, Miracle City agreed to send the Big Dry Emperor back to the Big Dry Empire. The Big Dry Empire would most likely pay a large amount of compensation, ceding territory, and other things, but Miracle City was still Miracle City and the Big Dry Empire was still the Big Dry Empire. This was a fact that would never change. This was an international convention. After all, an emperor couldn't be killed just like that. Right now everyone's focus was on the Miracle Continent and Miracle City's new technology. There was news on this side, But the media controlled by Miracle City didn't report much, so no one cared about the situation on this side. Another half a month passed peacefully like this. Meng Qinggu and Chu Tian often appeared on the Miracle Continent, and the Big Dry Emperor became a frequent visitor of the Miracle Continent. Everyone thought that the two sides had turned hostility into friendship. As for what kind of compensation Miracle City and the Big Dry Empire had reached, everyone tried to inquire about it, but the feedback they received was different. This was the most painful and difficult choice of the century. There were several empire-level powers that jumped out to criticize Miracle City's methods. They thought that Miracle City wanted to be a dictator and they wanted to rule the entire world, so they called for the other empires to join together and stop Miracle City's ambitions from spreading. This kind of worry quickly spread across the continent. People were worried that Miracle City would become too big for them to handle in the end. Because at that time, there wouldn't be any power on the continent that could resist the Miracle Federation. Although there were many empires that responded, there were even more empires that were hesitant. Especially the 6 empire-level powers that had a close relationship with Miracle City. Although it was hard for them to accept Miracle City's methods, they could feel how strong Miracle City was. Once Miracle City and the Big Dry Empire merged, their position in the Western Sea couldn't be shaken at all. Even if the entire continent attacked Miracle City, they could at least protect themselves. This would inevitably develop into a long war that would last for several decades or even 100 years. Once they started a war with Miracle City, outer space's underground ruins, transportation, and communication, these things would all be cut off. Meng Qinggu saw that the continent's situation had suddenly become serious, but she didn't panic because these rulers' reactions were within her expectations. For such a large matter, if these rulers happily accepted it and didn't raise any objections, it would be strange. Meng Qinggu sent out invitations to all the ruler-level powers on the continent. Miracle City was prepared to hold an empire summit, and this summit would invite all the rulers of the continent, letting everyone gather to discuss this matter. Meng Qinggu knew that although they had taken care of the Big Dry Emperor and the Big Dry Empire, if they didn't shut up the people of the outside world, the Miracle Federation would never be established. This conference was very important. It would even affect the future of the world. Chapter 649. The topic of this Empire Summit was Continent Peace Conference. This conference was proposed by Miracle City, and the location was still the Miracle Royal Palace. Ever since the Miracle Royal Palace was built, it had become the top meeting place on the Miracle Continent. There were a total of 22 empire-level powers on the continent, and 3 of them were special groups that didn't care about worldly matters. Even with such a large matter happening on the continent, they still showed an indifferent attitude. Therefore, other than these 3, there were 19 powers participating in this conference. There was no doubt. This was an unprecedented super summit. Each participant was in existence at the peak of the continent. The topic this time was to discuss the establishment of the Miracle Federation and the future development of the continent. Each emperor-level character had serious expressions as they sat in the conference room. Whether their relationship with Miracle City was good or bad, there was not a single emperor that was willing to see Miracle City swallow the Big Dry Empire and become a superpower. Chu Tian, City Lord's thoughts have changed too quickly. Your wedding has yet to settle the storm on the continent, and now you want to establish some Miracle Federation. Us old fellows really can't keep up with your thoughts. The first to speak was the Dragon Lord from the Dragon Territory. However, as one of the 6 allied countries, the Dragon Territory had a good relationship with Miracle City, therefore the Dragon Lord didn't oppose Chu Tian right away. He just patiently said to Chu Tian, "If it's just establishing the Miracle Federation, I think with Miracle City's current reputation, position, and fame, it would be acceptable. The problem now is that the area you've encircled is too large." That's right. The Wild Beast Empire's Wild Beast Emperor couldn't sit still. The Miracle Federation's territory is already larger than the average empire. If the Big Dry Empire is included, it will instantly occupy half of the Western continent and the entire Western Sea. At that time, perhaps even 3 to 5 empires added together wouldn't be able to compare to the Miracle Federation. The Burning Heaven Emperor said, "I ask the city lord to think twice before acting. After all, your actions will damage the relationship with the countries of the continent and will damage Miracle City's image on the continent." I say, "Why are you being so polite with him?" An emperor expressed his stance in front of everyone. He was filled with rage as he released a powerful and dignified aura. Each recognized empire on the continent has a long history of over 10,000 years. If your Miracle City rashly swallows one, I think it will cause chaos in the region. It will spread to the entire continent and become the fuse that will cause chaos on the continent. I can't allow this matter to happen. Exactly. Another emperor stood up and said, "The continent has reached a balance. This stable situation has lasted for thousands of years. Although there are occasional conflicts between the empires, there has never been a war that could destroy a country. Miracle City wants to swallow the Big Dry Empire. Isn't this breaking the balance of power?" Objection. This kind of thing must not happen. Chu Tian and Meng Qingwu did not speak, but the whole meeting room was filled with objections. However, this phenomenon was also expected, so the two of them were not surprised by their behavior. They just calmly waited for them to finish speaking. My attitude is very simple. Chu Tian sat calmly in his seat. He was no longer a nobody. Even in the face of these emperors, he would not lose his composure or avoid them. Let's be frank today. I have invited everyone here to discuss how to solve this problem, not to let everyone stop us. Chu Tian, what do you mean by this? You still don't understand? Chu Tian gently snapped his fingers. Miracle City's position is very firm. Whether you agree or not, we will not waver on this matter. The Miracle Federation must be established. This is already an established fact and no one can stop it from happening. We are here today to discuss a peace agreement based on this established fact, exploring the development of the continent in the next 100 or even 1,000 years, establishing a pattern of common prosperity and development. Everyone looked at each other in blank dismay. The emperors were already beginning to feel angry. This arrogant brat simply did not place them in his eyes at all. The people here were all famous for hundreds or even thousands of years. This brat Chu Tian had just risen on the continent for less than 2 years, yet he dared to not place them in his eyes at all. This was a very vile behavior. Chu Tian did not place them in his eyes at all, so he continued, "The Miracle Federation's establishment is already a trend. It cannot be stopped by any opposing voices. Miracle City has the strongest technology on the continent and the Big Dry Empire is the strongest empire on the Western Sea. Once our two powers merge to form the Miracle Federation, we will immediately become the strongest power on the Western continent. I might as well say something offensive. At that time, even if everyone works together, they might not be able to defeat us." Everyone's expressions changed. This fellow was just too arrogant. Was he declaring war on all the powers on the continent? Good Chu Tian, I never thought you would be this ambitious. It seems like there's nothing to talk about today. That's right, let's prepare for war. Our 19 powers, do you think we can't deal with your little Miracle Federation? No matter how arrogant you are, you shouldn't go too far. The emperors angrily wanted to leave. You all calm down and listen to what he has to say. A cold voice without any anger came over at this time. The one who spoke this time was the Netherworld Sea's Nether King. The Nether King was one of the emperors with the most experience, but because he was an undead, no one knew how long he had lived for. Actually, out of all the emperors present, the Nether King was the one that didn't want to break off relations with Miracle City the most. The undead were said to be immortal and would never grow old. However, those who truly understood the undead would not think so. In fact, the undead could also perish. This was because once they were transformed into undead, all of their senses would cease to exist. Sight, hearing, touch, smell, and so on. In addition, all of their physiological functions would stop. They did not need to eat, reproduce, or sleep. The undead were like a ball of fire in a cage. They could only use a special method to sense the world. The longer this state lasted, the more their soul and mind would decline. The aging of the physical body could be maintained with medicine, but once the soul died, it was irreversible. With the recent birth of the Miracle Continent, large amounts of undead from the Netherworld Sea entered the Miracle Continent. These undead reconstructed their bodies on the Miracle Continent, and they could use biological methods to dissolve the world, which had a large effect on the aging of the undead. The undead were a race that had no desires. The Netherworld Sea was one of the most mysterious powers on the continent, so it was unknown what kind of terrifying background they had. The Netherworld Sea didn't want to participate in the chaotic battles of the continent because wealth and power had no meaning to them. Only by making them truly immortal could they display their greatest value. The emperors that wanted to leave hesitated a bit. The biggest problem now was the attitude of the 6 empires in the Miracle City Alliance. The Netherworld Sea had the deepest background and history among the 6 empires in the Miracle City Alliance. If the Netherworld Sea chose to stand on the side of the Miracle Federation, there was no hope of overthrowing the Miracle Federation at all. If everyone thought about it, Chu Tian's words were a bit arrogant, but it wasn't the truth. Miracle City had developed to this step today. They were no longer existences that could be casually destroyed. The continent's transportation, logistics, and communication systems were all created by Miracle City. This also meant that if they became enemies with Miracle City only needed to cut off these things and they would quickly return to their previous state. Not to mention attacking Miracle City at that time. The Empire's armies would cross the continent and it wouldn't even take a year or 2 for them to gather. Miracle City's powerful transportation technology, especially the space gate, as well as the deep space weapons that appeared not long ago, they had the ability to destroy the continent's armies before they gathered. If the continent's armies gathered together, could they defeat the Miracle Federation? This was too difficult. Miracle City's technology was too far ahead of the continent. Every year was a whole new world, therefore there were too many uncertainties. When the Big Dry Empire attacked Miracle City was just a power that was a bit weaker than a normal warring kingdom. Who would have thought that the Big Dry Empire would be the losing side? History always had a pattern. Now that the continent's countries were working together to deal with the Miracle Federation, of course it looked like the Miracle Federation had no chance of winning, but who knew the result when they really fought? Once this kind of battle started, it would be very hard to stop. The Miracle Alliance was surrounded by over 20 powers. Even if they couldn't hold on and Miracle City was about to fall, Miracle City could retreat to the Western Sea, underground, or outer space. This way, they wouldn't be able to chase them no matter what. After all, they didn't have the necessary technology. If they couldn't wipe out Miracle City in one go, this power would come back sooner or later and they would become the continent's nightmare. In today's meeting, they had to continue even if they didn't want to. If they couldn't come up with a satisfactory result, the continent would welcome an unprecedented calamity. Chapter 650. Everyone's attitude was within his expectations. This included the Nether King and the other undead representatives. The reason why Chu Tian dared to be this fearless was because the Miracle Federation had the confidence to dominate an area. Secondly, although the 19 powers were very strong, it wasn't an easy matter for them to work together. It was because they were too strong. It would be hard for them to cooperate sincerely like this. If the empires worked together, Miracle City wouldn't even need to make a move. There would be internal conflicts between the various races and countries because of the inequalities. Frankly speaking, even if they worked together, they would still be a motley crew. Without several years, they wouldn't be able to work together. Now they could have a proper discussion. Concerning the Miracle Federation, I think I should be the one to speak. Meng Qingwu knew that Chu Tian didn't care about the consequences when he spoke. If he was the one to speak, he might cause some trouble, therefore Meng Qingwu personally explained the Miracle Federation's plan. Concerning the establishment of the Miracle Federation, everyone can't just look at the increase in strength, they should also look at our essence. The Burning Heaven Emperor asked, "What is your essence?" No matter how it changes, from Miracle City to the Forest Alliance, to the Miracle Federation, our essence has never changed and our essence is miracle commerce. Meng Qingwu slowly said, "We have strong technology as our backing, we have a foothold in business, we develop in business, and we build a country and business, so in the end, we are still a company. Then in terms of our roots, we are just merchants and not ambitious people. Dominating the continent has no meaning for us. We are more inclined to do business with the continent and let the entire continent enjoy Miracle Commerce's products and technology. This is our core. War is the result of political games and competing for benefits. Miracle Commerce is different from the other countries. Our core interest is not in war, but in peace. Therefore, we have no reason to dominate the world. This is because we can rely on our current technology to develop our business to the peak. So in terms of essence, Miracle Commerce is not aggressive. As long as the world is prosperous and we have relations with other countries, we can become the true winners. Everyone knit their brows. Although these words were reasonable, but it was too difficult to convince these people. From the few years that Miracle Commerce has appeared on the continent, we have never occupied a single inch of land. We have always used cooperation and openness as our main method. The Miracle Federation still believes in this. Meng Qingwu said this and then added, "The times are different now. Everyone can see that Miracle City has begun to spread across the continent. The technology we control is becoming more and more precious and powerful, but our overall strength can't compare to anyone here. The continent's situation is very stable now, so we can barely hold our current position. This is the so-called unpredictable winds and clouds in the sky. If there is a large-scale war, Miracle City will be the first to be fought over by the various countries. Do you think we can be at ease?" Meng Qingwu said solemnly, "Miracle City's technology stands at the pinnacle of this world, but we don't have the corresponding power to protect this technology." It was like a frail child guarding a huge vault, surrounded by a group of strong men. The instability and hidden dangers of such an existence were far greater than the rise of a superpower. We had no choice but to use this method to increase our confidence. Now that the continent is becoming one, we are bound together for good or bad. I hope that war will never happen. Miracle City's technology was indeed too attractive. If they fell out with Miracle City now, both sides would suffer losses. No one would gain any benefits from this matter. The Wind Moon Empress couldn't help saying, "Then what are you prepared to do? Since you invited us here, you must have already thought of a solution." The Wind Moon Empress was one of the most difficult emperors. This reason was very laughable. These emperors were addicted to playing on the Miracle Continent, and there were many interesting inventions from Miracle City. These empires were the first to benefit from it compared to the other empires on the continent. Therefore, they were the most affected, and now they had to suddenly break off relations with Miracle City. This was a very difficult choice. It really was a very difficult choice. For today's meeting, we are only the organizers. We hope to form an alliance between the 19 of you. Meng Qingwu didn't beat around the bush. At the same time, we hope to gather the strength of the 19 countries to create a joint council that will protect peace and prosperity on the continent. Meng Qingwu continued to add, "The Miracle Federation is willing to promise that they will forever remain neutral, not roping in any power, and accept the Joint Council's supervision. No matter what happens on the continent, they will not use any force to invade a city or land. If they violate the contract, they will be attacked by the entire world." This contract placed the Miracle Federation on the opposite side of all the powers on the continent. If the Miracle Federation made any movements, the entire world would join together to deal with the Miracle Federation. An emperor said, "The Miracle Federation is developing very quickly. Who knows what the future will be like? We might have a chance of winning now, but what about in 10 or 100 years? This is another important bargaining chip that we have to propose today." Meng Qingwu had already thought of this relationship. Miracle Commerce will lift the ban on all goods from today onwards. We can build transport gates on the continent for free, which will be managed by the Joint Council. Other than that, we will sell 50% of Miracle City's high-end weapons, from the warships to the deep space weapons. We will allow Miracle City's weapons to flow across the continent, increasing the continent's strength like this. This was a rather sincere condition. Actually, everyone understood in their hearts that Miracle City swallowing the Big Dry Empire was just completing their path of domination ahead of time. Otherwise, with Miracle City's current development, Even if they didn't swallow the Big Dry Empire, as long as they formed the Miracle Federation and developed for 8–10 years, Miracle City could still become the overlord of the continent. This was a hard-to-change fact. Unless they destroyed the Miracle Federation before it matured, but was this easier said than done? The main difference between the Miracle Federation and the countries of the continent was in technology. If they couldn't make up for this difference in technology and weapons, the result would be the same even if the Miracle Federation didn't swallow the Big Dry Empire. Now that Miracle City had swallowed the Big Dry Empire as a condition, they were willing to sell half of their most advanced weapons. This was equal to giving the other countries of the continent the ability to make super weapons. This way, the continent's strength could be balanced. No matter how powerful the weapons are, they are still made by Miracle City, so it's hard for us to be assured. An emperor that opposed the Miracle Federation loosened a bit, but he threw out a new condition. It's not impossible for the Miracle Federation to be formed. We request that Miracle City release a portion of their technology. Before Meng Qingwu could say anything, Chu Tian directly answered for her. Miracle City can release their military technology. For example, the source energy machines, the mecha armors, and the warships. We can release all of these military technology. When he said this, everyone was shocked. Miracle Commerce was really willing to release the source energy weapons manufacturing technology? This was a very important piece of technology. If the people of the continent could make source energy weapons, the strength of the continent would increase by leaps and bounds. Everyone wouldn't be afraid of Miracle City like they were now. Meng Qingwu slightly knit her brows, but she quickly relaxed. They would release it then. Miracle City had spent 4 years to stabilize their technology, so the countries of the continent would need at least 5–8 years to understand it. Now Miracle Commerce controlled the main resource fields and resource channels of the continent, so they could create the most perfect production chain in this period of time. So what if the countries of the continent had the related technology? The talents, resources, and production chain were all controlled by Miracle City. If they wanted to make large warships, it wouldn't be enough without at least 10 years. Even if the other powers controlled Miracle City's technology, controlling this technology and developing it were two different things. They could only make source energy cannons and guided missiles in the first few years. It was impossible for them to make high-level products. Miracle City's high-level weapons, especially the large motherships, deep space weapons, and etc., were actually made from many fields of technology. Not only did it include the source energy weapons, it also included the energy field, the smart brain field, and etc. It was already not bad if these empire powers could make simple source energy cannons and guided missiles in the early stages. Miracle City's lead in equipment would not stop. But it also gave these powers a chance to resist. Chu Tian added another clause. We can release the secret information on the source energy weapons, but the continent's treaty will also be changed. After the Miracle Federation is formed, we will not expand and we will not take the initiative to annex any land outside of the Federation. This treaty didn't sound any different, but there was a big trick in it. Not taking the initiative didn't mean they wouldn't annex. This also meant that if a few small to medium-sized kingdoms wanted to join the Miracle Federation, they wouldn't touch the continent's treaty. This could be considered leaving a path of retreat for the Miracle Federation in the future. The empires discussed this for a while. The Wind Moon Empress, the Dark Knight Elven King, the Nether King, the Dragon Elder, the Heaven Burning Emperor, and the Wild Beast Emperor, the 6 empires all expressed their agreement. This was because the 6 empires had been working with Miracle City for a long time. They had even supported and trained their own allies in the alliance. Therefore, compared to others, they were the beneficiaries, therefore they were more willing to accept this matter. Now that Miracle City was willing to release their military technology, the continent would be in a new balance in the future. The Miracle Federation's formation was already inevitable. Since they couldn't stop this matter from happening, they had to go with the flow and obtain as many benefits as possible from this matter. The 6 empire-level powers all agreed. What could the others do if they didn't agree? The people present weren't fools. No one wanted to see a power that surpassed all the empires on the continent, but the Miracle Federation was too powerful and they had the help of the 6 empires. Even if the other powers worked together, it would be hard for them to resist, so they could only agree in the end. Everyone spent several days discussing the details. Finally, the Continents Treaty and the Joint Parliament were formed. This treaty was the first treaty signed by all the emperors on the continent. There were over 1,000 rules that firmly bound the continent, laying the foundation for the continent's development for the next 1,000 years. Chapter 651. After several days. This closed meeting was like announcing the final result to the continent. The 19 empires chose a normal kingdom in the center of the continent as the address and officially established the United Nations, led by the Joint Council. There were a total of 19 seats in the Joint Council. Each emperor sent their most trusted person as a council member. This council was responsible for maintaining the continent's peace. When there was an irreconcilable conflict between the countries of the continent, the Joint Council could ask the Council to intervene. The Council had the right to passively or actively intervene and conduct a fair trial. If a country didn't obey the trial, the Council had the right to send a peacekeeping army to attack that country, and the other member countries had the duty to help the peacekeeping army. This Joint Council seemed like it was established to maintain the continent's peace, but its main goal was the Miracle Federation that was about to be born. This was because once the Miracle Federation revealed its wild nature, the Joint Council would summon the entire continent to fight against the Miracle Federation. Not only did Miracle City not have any objections to this, on the day the Joint Council was established, they gifted 5 warships, 100 fighter jets, 1,000 cannons, and tens of thousands of source energy weapons. Other than that, they provided money to build a space gate, 4 transport towers, and 500 transport scrolls for the Joint Council. These transport scrolls would be sent to the heads of the various countries. Other than that, they gave the Joint Council a large palace in the Miracle Continent's sacred city to work in the virtual world, so they could react to any sudden situation on the continent. No matter how civilized this world was, it was still about power. Without enough power, the establishment of the Joint Parliament would only be a figurehead. In the end, it would become a puppet or a useless organization in name. Large amounts of weapons were necessary. Transport towers, space gates, transport scrolls, communication devices, and virtual offices, they were all a complete set. The matter of Miracle City using the 6 great alliance countries to defeat the Big Dry Empire had already been spread across the continent. Everyone knew that Miracle City had invented a mysterious space gate that could quickly send an army to every corner of the continent. Whoever had this terrifying equipment in their hands would have the power to attack the entire continent. This was a very terrifying deterrent weapon. The Joint Council hadn't been established yet, but Miracle City had given them large amounts of precious weapons and equipment, and Miracle City had helped build the Space Gate. This already gave the Joint Council a large amount of power and authority. Miracle Commerce's assistance was necessary, but just relying on Miracle Commerce's support couldn't support a completely independent Joint Council. To be qualified to become a member of the Joint Parliament, the first condition was to be one of the top empires on the continent. Every member of the Joint Parliament would be able to mobilize a top-notch army of 100,000 soldiers from their own country, ultimately forming a super army of nearly 2 million soldiers in the Joint Parliament. In addition, every empire had to pay membership fees to the Allied Parliament every year. Miracle Commerce would support the United Nations in building various factories to form an industrial chain. However, before the United Nations could be self-sufficient, all of its deficit expenses would be paid by the empires equally. The greatest characteristic of the Joint Parliament was its neutrality. It had to be an absolutely neutral force. In the future, in order to ensure the neutrality of the Joint Parliament, an undead sage who had lived for 30,000 years would be selected from the Netherworld Sea to be the chairman of the Parliament. Although this undead sage had incomparable wisdom and experience, he had basically lost his ability to act on his own. He could only rely on a set of mental spells to complete a task through hypnosis. With him in charge of the Joint Parliament, justice would be ensured. In the future, the empires could ask Miracle Commerce for help and create a special super smart brain for the Joint Parliament. With this super smart brain that didn't have any emotions as the chairman, the members of the parliament might be affected by the situation, but the smart brain wouldn't. The smart brain's high analysis and processing abilities allowed it to surpass the entire staff. This kind of joint parliament would undoubtedly have a large influence on the continent. With an army that could leave the empires and receive orders from the joint parliament, as well as a large amount of military equipment and resources, it would become the cornerstone of the continent's peace in the future. This was the greatest harvest from this conference. All aspects of preparation were in full swing. The Miracle Federation matter could not be dragged on any longer. Chu Tian and Meng Qingwu came to the Big Dry Empire to clean up the mess. After Meng Qingwu's constant intervention and adjustments, 90% of the citizens and nobles had already accepted the fact that they were a part of the Miracle Federation. But no matter how clever Meng Qingwu's methods were, there would always be people who opposed it. These people were led by the nobles who had lost their benefits. These nobles didn't agree with the Miracle Federation, and through inciting their armies and citizens, they finally formed a resistance force. As for these opposing forces, Chu Tian's method of dealing with them was very simple. If he could buy them, he would buy them. If he couldn't buy them, he would scare them. If he couldn't scare them, he would beat them. If they couldn't be beaten, he would kill them. Miracle City's fighter planes were all sent to the Big Dry Empire's territory, and their deep space weapons were all aimed at the Big Dry Empire. Even if a rebel army appeared anywhere, it couldn't be hidden from Miracle City's eyes. Miracle City's deep space weapons and fast troops could eliminate them with lightning-fast speed. After around half a month, the Big Dry Empire's opposing forces had all quieted down. Miracle City didn't just eliminate the opposing forces in this half a month, they also cooperated with both sides of the Big Dry Empire to build transport towers in the 36 states of the Big Dry Empire in just half a month. Other than that, they used Miracle City's newly developed Heaven's Net warships to cover the entire empire. In just a few short days, the Big Dry Empire that had never come into contact with advanced technology suddenly felt the convenience of technology. This was just the beginning. In the future, when the transport towers appeared and the space warehouse became more powerful, Miracle Commerce's products would pour into it. The Empire's citizens would know how beneficial it was to join the Miracle Federation. The situation was already over. The opposing forces had no choice but to submit. Chu Tian and Meng Qingwu smoothly pacified the Big Dry Empire. Almost at the same time, the continent's central joint parliament was formed. In order to show the legitimacy of the Miracle Federation and to boost the momentum of the new joint parliament, Chu Tian used his status as Miracle City's city lord to submit an application to the joint parliament to form a federation. The establishment of the Miracle Federation was already an internal matter. The reason why Chu Tian did this was mainly to find a legal province for the Miracle Federation. This was because the joint parliament was formed by the powers of the various empires. If the joint parliament approved it, it meant the entire continent approved it. Then the Miracle Federation would be legitimate and there wouldn't be anyone who dared point fingers at them in the future. The joint parliament needed a heavyweight like the Miracle Federation to establish their credibility. Even Miracle City, who was at its peak, needed to submit an application to the joint parliament if they wanted to form a federation. Then what other power would dare go around the joint parliament? Both sides took what they needed. Chu Tian submitted an application and the joint parliament accepted it. Finally, after the parliament analyzed it, they voted to establish the federation. The joint parliament planned out the effective area of the Miracle Federation, which included the Forest Alliance, the Kingdom Alliance, the Underground Alliance, the West Sea Alliance, and the Big Dry Empire, a total of 5 regions. Each region would have a local government that would have ordinary administrative and security powers. The most important military power would be managed by Miracle City. The joint parliament signed a contract with the Miracle Federation. After the Miracle Federation was established, it would never expand, never invade, and never build a fortress. Other than that, it wouldn't send out a large army to attack other countries, etc. This was announced to the world through the joint parliament and it would be notarized and supervised by the world. Meng Qingwu's mediation had a complete victory. The various empires couldn't do anything about the Miracle Federation at all. The Miracle Federation had appeared out of nowhere, and its strength far surpassed any of the empires on the continent. It would become the #1 superpower on the continent. But the Miracle Federation couldn't be established just because they wanted to. This was because miracle commerce had only developed in the Forest of Chaos for a few years. Strictly speaking, miracle commerce hadn't even fully grasped the Forest of Chaos yet. Before the Miracle Federation was established, there were still many neutral cities in the Forest of Chaos. They couldn't even deal with a trivial Forest of Chaos, and now they had to integrate 5 large regions. This was not something that could be done in a short period of time. But this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that the Miracle Federation had been established, but they didn't have a proper leader. This was because the Miracle Federation was different from any country on the continent. This was not an empire, so the title of ruler was not suitable. This was because the leader of the Federation needed to manage several large regions and countless states. Therefore, this supreme position was named President. The President election could not be inherited or directly appointed. In order to create the best start, although they knew there was no suspense in the result, Miracle City still launched a presidential election for the entire Miracle Federation. Chapter 652. The Miracle Federation's first presidential election was about to begin. The candidates for the first presidential election were all people from the Forest Alliance, including Miracle City's City Lord Chu Tian, the Vice City Lord Meng Qinggu, Vivian, the Production and Resource Minister, the City Lord's wife Meng Yingying, as well as the Eternal Forest's Lancelot, the Dragon Lord Nidhogg, the Kingdom Alliance's Alliance Master Qin Bingyu, and others. The Big Dry Empire was a defeated country and a newcomer, so no one had the qualifications to run for president yet. The Miracle Federation's president could only be chosen from these candidates. Actually, for this kind of election, there was no suspense at all. But in order to establish the Federation's model, they had to follow the rules. Although the Miracle Alliance's internal members didn't care. But within the Miracle Federation, this matter still caused a large wave of discussion and uproar. Luo Yulian was the eldest princess of the Big Dry Empire's #1 subsidiary kingdom, the Heavenly Dragon Warring Kingdom. Actually, before the Big Dry Empire and Miracle City came into conflict, she had been paying attention to Miracle City like everyone else. The Big Dry Empire suffered defeat after defeat, making Luo Yulian feel an indescribable fear towards Miracle City. She didn't understand why the large Big Dry Empire would be beaten by a small power that appeared out of nowhere. Especially after learning that the Big Dry Emperor had been captured alive, Luo Yulian completely lost confidence in the empire. The Big Dry Emperor's prestige in the Big Dry Empire was unmatched, and now that the Big Dry Emperor had been captured, what face did the Big Dry Empire have to stand on the continent? Luo Yulian's understanding of Miracle City deepened. She obtained all kinds of Miracle City's products through various channels, and it was these Miracle City products that allowed Luo Yulian to have a deeper understanding of Miracle City. She began to understand why Miracle City was victorious in the war. This kind of power filled with creativity, it was simply a new future for the continent. In the future, Luo Yulian would witness the Big Dry Empire's chaos. The news of the Big Dry Emperor being captured was sealed by the Big Dry Empire's high level, but for some unknown reason, probably because the paper couldn't contain the fire, the news spread across the empire like a plague, and there were rumors everywhere. Some people said that the Big Dry Emperor's cultivation had been crippled and he was being tortured day and night in Miracle City. Some people said that the Big Dry Emperor had lost 2 million soldiers in this battle, and he had to give up 100 cities. There were also rumors that the Deqian Empire was greatly weakened after this battle. More than a dozen loyal vassal states had cut off relations with the Deqian Empire, and several empires on the continent were working together to beat them when they were down. All kinds of rumors were flying everywhere, some were true and some were false, and it was difficult to distinguish them. In short, it made people panic. Merchants stopped doing business, and medicine farmers stopped cultivating. Many families were even preparing to move. Even the administrative system was paralyzed. Some people in the Heaven Dragon Warring Kingdom suggested leaving the Big Dry Empire, and Luo Yulian became a loyal supporter of this. The reason was very simple: the Big Dry Empire didn't have time to care about subordinate kingdoms. The Heavenly Dragon Empire used this chance to escape the Big Dry Empire's control and rely on Miracle City. Something that Luo Yulian never expected happened. The Heavenly Dragon Empire had left the Big Dry Empire's control and was prepared to rely on other powers when an important piece of news was sent over. The Big Dry Empire announced that they would merge with Miracle City and the Big Dry Empire would become a country under Miracle City's control. This change was too fast and too shocking. Luo Yulian was very happy that the Big Dry Empire's Big Dry Emperor didn't participate in the presidential election. Otherwise, if the Big Dry Empire's Big Dry Emperor became the Federation's president, the Heavenly Dragon Warring Kingdom that betrayed the Big Dry Empire wouldn't have a good ending. The Miracle Federation's election was divided into local and central elections. The local regions had their own president and the central region had their own president. Of course, the local president was just the head of the local government and most of the power was concentrated in the central region. This meant that after tonight, the Big Dry Empire would no longer be a sovereign country. It made a respected empire submit to this kind of degree. How did Miracle City do this? Luo Yulian was shocked, but she felt this result was very good. Miracle City and the Big Dry Empire could work together. This would lead to the rise of a giant power on the Western continent. A warring kingdom like the Heavenly Dragon Warring Kingdom could become independent from now on, becoming a part of the Federation. They wouldn't need to live under the Big Dry Empire anymore. The Federation's presidential election was about to begin. Miracle City sent the list of presidential candidates and detailed information to the various regions of the Federation for people to look over. This process was undoubtedly promoting the high-level members of Miracle Commerce, allowing the various regions of the Federation to have a deeper understanding of Miracle City and Miracle Commerce. When Luo Yulian saw Chu Tian's rise to dominate the continent, she couldn't believe her eyes. There was actually such a legendary person in this world. She had thought that Miracle Commerce's technology and background had been accumulated over thousands of years, but now it seemed like she was completely wrong. From nothing to something, it only took a total of 5 years. Less than 5 years. What could be done in 5 years? A cultivator could spend 5 years in a closed-door cultivation room. For an expert or a powerful race, 5 years was just a blink of an eye. They didn't have any concept of time at all. The miracle commerce created by Chu Tian had grown from nothing in less than 5 years. Now it had gone from a small company in a small country to a giant corporation that spanned the entire continent. Luo Yulian was very interested in the company chairman Chu Tian, but as she learned more about him, everything about this man that flew across the world like a meteor was inconceivable. No one knew where his intelligence came from and why he had so many ideas in his head. His birth, his experiences, everything about him was a mystery. 10 days later, the presidential election was finally held. Luo Yulian followed her family to the election location in the Heavenly Dragon Warring Kingdom's Imperial City. It was just Heavenly Dragon Imperial City, but there were 1.5 million people participating in the election. When Luo Yulian arrived at the election location, she was stunned by the sea of people in front of her. "Royal Father, what is going on here? There are so many people, how are we going to vote?" The Heavenly Dragon King was a middle-aged man over 50 years old. He never thought that there would be this many people participating in the election in Imperial City. In response to the eldest princess question, he pointed at the sky. Luo Yulian looked up at the sky and saw a giant ship appear in the sky above Heavenly Dragon City. This 500-meter-long super ship had the symbols of Miracle Commerce and the Miracle Federation on it, slowly descending into the central square of Imperial City. Too big. Too shocking. How could a giant ship made of metal fly in the sky? This was the country's first time seeing the masterpiece of Miracle Commerce, so every citizen was stunned. This was unavoidable, after all. In the eyes of normal people, Miracle Commerce's work had already surpassed reality and imagination, subverting everyone's common sense. Thank you everyone for supporting the Miracle Federation's first election. This ship is a Heaven's Net giant spiritual and information ship. The first Miracle Federation election will be conducted through spiritual votes. Each participant will use their spiritual energy as proof to vote in the election system. Each vote will be fair and open, laying a democratic and prosperous foundation for the Miracle Federation for generations to come. When everyone heard the voice coming from Miracle Commerce's warship, they were all stunned, unable to express themselves. Spiritual energy votes. This was something that had never been done before or since. Each person's spiritual energy was unique, and the probability of having the same spiritual energy was less than 1 in 2 billion. Therefore, anything could be faked, but spiritual energy votes could not be faked. This time the Miracle Federation was open to the public, so it was clear who sent out each spiritual energy vote. Other than that, during the spiritual energy vote process, Miracle Commerce could use spiritual energy to determine if the vote was fair or not because the spiritual energy was directly connected to the mind. If the vote was bought or forced, the spiritual energy vote would not pass. This meant that the Miracle Federation's presidential election did not depend on one's strength. This was true democracy, and this was true advancement. The Miracle Federation's presidential term was 10 years. Of course, the president could be re-elected, but the election every 10 years meant that the president had to be responsible for his words and actions. Wantonly plundering the people's wealth or tyrannical policies didn't win the hearts of the people, so they would be pushed down from the throne by the people. Similarly, as long as one had outstanding abilities and high morals, they could start from the lowest level to become a governor. Finally, they could participate in the regional presidential election and even become a presidential candidate in the future. Each person had unlimited possibilities as long as they were outstanding enough. From the local officials to the central president, everyone was like this. This kind of transparent and open political system was unique on the continent. But it gave people unlimited yearning and motivation. From now on, officials would no longer have the privilege of nobles. If they didn't do a good job, they could be pushed down by someone who coveted their position. This kind of competition and supervision would form an open political system that would help maintain the stability of the Miracle Federation and also give these countries hope. There were many people in the Big Dry Empire who were dissatisfied with Miracle City ruling the entire Federation, but with this system, it gave them hope and opportunity. The Big Dry Emperor could enter Miracle City as a presidential candidate in 10 years. With the Big Dry Empire's large population advantage, the Big Dry Emperor would be a strong candidate. Wouldn't the Big Dry Empire take over the Miracle Federation at that time? This sounded whimsical, but this kind of situation could happen, and it was reasonable for the Miracle Federation. Chapter 653. The Miracle Federation's presidential election had officially begun. There were a total of 200 areas for the election, and there were a total of 10 warships used for the election. Each warship was responsible for 20 areas, and each warship would stay for a day to collect votes, so it would take around 20 days in total. Miracle City's votes would be sent to the center, and the results would be announced to the entire continent through the media. Although they knew there was no suspense in this election, everyone still paid close attention to it. The various countries even started betting on the rankings of the candidates and the number of votes the president had. 5 days passed. There was a clear trend in the first wave. Chu Tian alone had over 70% of the votes, Meng Qingwu had 20% of the votes, and the remaining 10% belonged to the other candidates. 10 days passed. The second wave of data basically determined the result. Chu Tian still had 65% of the votes and Meng Qingwu had 26% of the votes. The two of them added together already had 91% of the votes, which also meant that the other candidates added together didn't have more than a single digit. These people could already be eliminated. After the Miracle Federation citizens understood the structure of Miracle City and Miracle Commerce, although Chu Tian's position was still high, there were many people who agreed with Meng Qingwu. Chu Tian's supporters were mainly from the middle and lower class because this group didn't know much about Miracle City and Miracle Commerce. Therefore, they were attracted by Chu Tian's personal growth and achievements, causing them to worship Chu Tian. The reason why Meng Qingwu had such a large number of supporters was mainly from the high class. They all knew that whether it was Miracle City or Miracle Commerce, they were all managed by Meng Qingwu. This vice city lord was smart and capable, making everyone who knew her feel admiration. Therefore, Meng Qingwu had a very good support rate. Of course. Actually, whether it was Meng Qingwu or Chu Tian being the president, the meaning was the same. Chu Tian's influence on the continent far surpassed Meng Qingwu's in the hearts of the emperors. This was because Meng Qingwu was smart and capable. If she didn't rely on a person like Chu Tian, she would at most be a successful person in a city or a country. She wouldn't be able to be famous like she was now. Chu Tian was the true soul of the Miracle Federation. The first president of the Miracle Federation would be Chu Tian. As for whether Chu Tian would be the president in the future, or whether it would be Meng Qingwu or another high-level member of Miracle Commerce, or even someone from the Big Dry Empire or another region, it didn't matter. This was because although the Miracle Federation was a country, the core was still Miracle Commerce. As long as Chu Tian and the others held Miracle Commerce in their hands, it didn't matter who was the president of the Miracle Commerce. It was just hiring someone to manage the country. The true lifeline of the country would always be in the hands of Miracle Commerce. Of course, with the people from Miracle Commerce here, it wouldn't be easy for the Big Dry Empire's Big Dry Emperor to run for president. The Big Dry Empire's population was a third of the Miracle Federation, but outside of the Big Dry Empire, the Big Dry Emperor couldn't find any supporters. There were quite a few people in the Big Dry Empire that supported Miracle Commerce, and this number would continue to increase. After the 15th day, there was basically no need to choose anymore. The number of voters already accounted for 75% of the voters, but Chu Tian's votes actually exceeded 50% of the voters. This also meant that even if the remaining people voted for Meng Qingwu, there was nothing they could do. Miracle City immediately announced to the public, the Miracle Federation's first president would be Chu Tian and the vice president would be Meng Qingwu. This result couldn't be changed from the beginning, but now that it was announced, it still caused a large amount of cheers and excitement. Congratulations to the president! Meng Yingying, Nangong Yun, Vivian, and the others all ran out to congratulate Chu Tian on becoming the president. Nangong Yun hugged Meng Yingying and casually said, "Does the president's wife want to treat us to a good meal? My requirements aren't high, just the Miracle Royal Palace's emperor's meal is fine." After these days, Meng Yingying had completely adapted to her identity, so she didn't reveal an embarrassed expression. "All right, not to mention the emperor's meal, we'll introduce a president's meal that's even better than the emperor's meal." "What? President's meal?" Vivian's eyes lit up. "I want one too." Choosing a president was such an important matter, but these people actually talked about food. They really didn't take this matter seriously. Meng Qingwu walked in from outside and said to these people, "The president has been chosen and the notice has been sent to the continent's joint parliament. We will now hold the president's inaugural speech. Yingying, you're the Federation's first lady, so you have to appear. There's also Nangong Yun and Vivian, you're all high-level officials of the Federation, so you have to attend." "It's this troublesome? We're different from before, the eyes of the entire continent are watching us, so we still have to go through formalities, this is unavoidable." Meng Qingwu helplessly shrugged her shoulders, "But the good news is that our presidential palace has already been built. I think we'll use it today, don't you want to take a good look?" The presidential palace. "This is great. I want to take a look." Miracle City's City Lord's castle was the City Lord's office. Now that Chu Tian's group had created the Miracle Federation to rule the continent, naturally there should be a new office. Everyone came to the transport tower. After the transport tower lit up, everyone appeared in the main hall of the presidential palace. The main hall of the City Lord's palace seemed to be completely sealed, being around the size of a small plaza. It was made from moon crystal, therefore it looked graceful and noble. The various countries' rulers were all invited here. The Wind Moon Empress looked around and said, "This is Miracle City's new presidential palace? I think it's only SOSO, it's only on the level of this emperor's temporary palace." The other rulers all nodded. Everyone thought that Miracle Commerce's new presidential palace would be very grand, but it seemed like the surrounding materials were high level, but the space wasn't big enough. It couldn't even compare to the Miracle Royal Palace. Everyone speaking too early. Chu Tian gently snapped his fingers. Turn on the exterior mode. The super smart brain received Chu Tian's order and a glow appeared under everyone's feet. The floor quickly became transparent and a shocking scene appeared in front of everyone. The entire plaza's floor turned into a giant map, but when everyone looked carefully, they were shocked to find that this wasn't a map at all, but rather a real image. The continent appeared in front of them. The mountains, lakes, ravines, oceans, and forests, all of it was perfectly displayed. Everyone finally understood what kind of situation Miracle Commerce's presidential palace was. This was a giant floating castle. Chu Tian explained to everyone's shocked expressions with a smile. The Miracle Federation's presidential palace is a floating castle that Miracle City has been building for a long time. This castle is currently only a tenth complete, but it has a rich weapon system, energy system, and defense system. It can stay in the astral wind layer and can also use rockets to charge out of the astral wind layer, entering outer space. Everyone was shocked. How on earth was such a castle built? Chu Tian continued to introduce it to everyone. This presidential palace has the most advanced technology on the continent, including transport technology, weapon technology, energy technology, and communication technology, therefore it can become a permanent floating command center. The future president of the Federation will be able to control the entire Federation from here. This was just too shocking. The heart of the Federation was high in the sky. It could enter the astral wind layer at any time and even enter outer space. Even the strongest army on the continent wouldn't be able to destroy this castle. After all, even a giant dragon couldn't pass through the astral wind layer, so they couldn't do anything even if they had strength. People began to arrive at this time. Not only were there guests from the various countries, there were also the regional presidents of Miracle City and the Big Dry Emperor. When the Big Dry Emperor saw the Miracle Federation's presidential palace, he understood why he lost. But it was fine. Although he lost, he didn't lose everything. The Miracle Federation's strong potential was gradually being revealed. The Big Dry Emperor wasn't that old, and with his cultivation, living another 500-600 years wasn't a problem. In these 500-600 years, the Big Dry Emperor could at least hold the position of the Big Dry Empire's regional president. Although the Miracle Federation's president position couldn't be inherited, the Big Dry Empire's advantage was something other families couldn't compare to. In the future, their heirs would be able to run for the Big Dry Empire's president position. Because of this competition, the Big Dry Empire's royal family would have a stronger life force. The Big Dry Emperor had already put down his complaints. He now had a bigger goal. In the next several hundred years, he decided to change his face and become a good president. He would govern the Big Dry Empire well and win the hearts of the people, challenging the presidential palace in the future. The Big Dry Emperor could already see that Chu Tian didn't have any interest in being the president. It was fine if he was the president for 1 or 2 terms, but if he was the president forever with Chu Tian's personality, he would be bored. After Chu Tian abdicated, Meng Qingwu could be the president for a few more terms, but Miracle Commerce's ambition wasn't the president position. They just needed to firmly grasp Miracle Commerce in their hands. As long as these two gave up on running for president in the future, wouldn't the Big Dry Emperor have a chance to sit in the supreme position of the continent? The Big Dry Emperor had lost his goal in the past, so he was blindly arrogant. Now that he had reached a higher height, he had regained his ambition and motivation. At worst, he would just have to wait 200-300 years. The live broadcast has been prepared. The Miracle Federation's City Lord's Palace and the Miracle Federation's President Chu Tian's speech will be sent to every corner of the continent. Now let's invite the president to speak. The people of the continent watched the live broadcast on their screens. The first thing that appeared on the screen was the full view of the City Lord's Palace. This was an image taken from a fighter jet. Miracle Commerce had spent several months to build the presidential palace. Although it didn't look complete and there were many areas that were still being built, one could see the grandeur of the presidential palace. A low and deep voice began to introduce it. The Miracle Federation's presidential palace was a floating castle made from Miracle Commerce's top technology. There were currently 10 large warships combined together, and it looked snow-white, giving people an indestructible feeling. This floating castle would become the symbol of the presidential palace. It would stay in the sky above Miracle City, and its orders would spread across the entire Miracle Federation, becoming the brain of the Miracle Federation that hung in the sky. Chu Tian and Meng Qingwu, the two presidents of the Federation, officially took office after a ceremony. After the two of them gave their inaugural speech, they announced the current situation of the Miracle Federation. The Miracle Federation had over 160 small and large countries and several thousand large cities divided into 8 regions. Each region began to elect a president. All the kings of the Federation could apply to become a candidate for the region's president. Another region's president was born like a raging fire. In the end, the Forest of Chaos region's president was the Elven King Lancelot. The Big Dry Empire's president was the Big Dry Emperor. The Great Zhou Queen Shenbingyu was the president of the 30 northern countries. The Dragon Lord Nidhogg was the president of the 30 southern countries. Jin Luo was the president of the 30 western countries and the 30 eastern countries, as well as the underground and outer space regions, were all presided over by Thunder's Fury, Burst Claw, and other people of virtue. The presidents of these regions came to the presidential palace, and each one represented their region to give their inaugural speech to the people of the continent. Meng Qingwu announced the Miracle Federation's administrative levels from low to high: city, state, member country, federal district, and Great Federation. The positions from low to high were City Lord, State Governor, King, Regional President, and Great Federation. From the prefectural governor level onwards, an election system was adopted to ensure that the entire country was fair and peaceful. In other words, from the Federation's president to the prefectural governor of a small country, everyone had to be elected through a spiritual popular election. This kind of system was unique on the continent. The Miracle Federation was not just a unique miracle state on the continent, it was also the most free and democratic region on the continent. This kind of mind made the rulers of the continent admire and feel assured at the same time. Since there was no inheritance, as long as one was a citizen of the Federation, they could run for president. This could only mean that the Miracle Federation and Chu Tian did not have any ambitions to swallow the continent, or at least they did not have too big of an ambition. Of course, for a giant like the Miracle Federation, it was not something that could be established in just a few short months. The various countries and powers needed to unite and work together. When the presidential palace's speech ended and everyone was about to put in more effort into their work, Miracle City and even the Forest of Chaos were suddenly shaken. Although it was not strong, it spread across a wide area and lasted for a long time, allowing everyone to deeply feel the power that was exploding from underground. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.